Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 2 of No Ordinary Conversation. Uh, Today's episode is with retired Master Sergeant Terry Levoy. Terry and I worked together at the Communications Electronics School in 29 Palms, teaching the Information Assurance Technicians course together in 2002 to 2006. Terry is one of those human beings who's probably uh, the nicest and empathetic Marine that I think I've ever come across. He's just all around a good person with a beautiful family, and I had a really really good conversation with him about the totality of his life. So far, at least, that it's got a long ways to go, but uh, this was a really good conversation. Yeah, second in the series. I hope to keep these going. It's fascinating to talk to different people, and it's fascinating to learn more about uh, what it is that makes people tick. So, with no further ado, episode 2, Terry Levoy and No Ordinary Conversation. Thank you.
So, I'm here today with Terry Levoy. Known Terry for going on 20 years now. Yeah, because we met in the Stumps, and I got there in December of 22, and you were already there. So that's
Yeah, I've been there
22 years actually.
I think, yep,
Yep.
a while.
Oh yeah, no, time flies when you think about it. Um, like I was telling you before, I wanted to sit down and get to and talk to you, get to know you better, learn about all the things that you've done in your life, your priorities, your thoughts, your how you felt about things, what you would have done if you could have done. Um, just really just a gambit of who is Terry Levoy, and I'm going to go with 57 years. How old are you?
Just turned 60 a couple months ago.
Holy shit! Good thing
I
we're recording this thing now, man. You don't have much longer. Um, so yeah, no, it's and that to be honest with you, I kind of try to focus this at the older generation, I would say. And by older, I don't even necessarily mean age. I mean someone who has finished a career. You know, that maybe they've done a couple careers. In your case, that's applicable, and you really have the ability to look back on your entire life and think about it in perspective. Whereas if I was interviewing somebody in their 30s, I mean, that's you're only not even halfway through your life yet, right? So I appreciate this chance. Um, like I said, we met in 29 Palms. Um, I know you very well from 29 Palms. I know your family. I know your kids. Um, I've seen you since then, but in truth, I really only know you from that little piece of when it was. And then, like any military type of friendship, when you leave, you come back, it's all like you never left. That doesn't necessarily mean you know stuff about that.
Yeah,
Maybe that's good to know. So we'll go ahead and just jump right into this. When and where were you born?
I was born in '64, Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Really?
Yeah,
Florida.
yeah.
I'll
I
be
don't know.
damned.
Thought it.
I
I don't
I
think I
would not have guessed Florida.
did live there long. I think then we moved to. I mean, I don't remember obviously, but I heard that we moved to Chicago and lived in Chicago for a while. And I mean, you want me to just go on from here?
Well,
Okay. Lived
so
in Chicago. Yeah, go ahead.
okay, so Florida to Chicago, moved around quite a bit. Where, like in your when you think of like where I grew up, where home was, where's that?
That was mostly Sacramento, California. Yeah,
That's right. That's right.
I lived there. I lived in the Bay Area from since I was about 4 or 5, and then I guess when I was 5 up until I graduated high school was in Sacramento, California.
Okay, so yeah, no, that's a major portion of your like childhood and awareness. So Sacramento, interesting. Where at in Sacramento?
Suburbs to the east called Citrus Heights.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Be a little bit quieter than it is now. I mean, Sacramento's spreading like most big cities, and it's a big
Oh yeah.
metropolis now, I think. But yeah,
Uh, we're
changed a lot. Every time I go back there, the California I grew up in seems a lot different than the one now. When I go to visit, I'm like, what's going on here?
it's California, right?
Yeah,
Um, was it like a suburb out a little bit out in the country
not in the
at
country,
that
really.
time?
Nah, suburbs,
Suburbs. Okay.
neighborhoods and suburbs. Yeah, actually, I had a pretty big high school. I think we had a pretty big graduating class, pretty big San Juan High School, pretty big class there. And then I immediately, well, let me back up a little bit. I lost my mother tragically when I was 4 in
Really?
Chicago. Yeah.
I'm
Uh,
sorry.
no, I lost her to
It didn't have
suicide.
nothing to do with it, but that no, it's terrible. That sucks.
Yeah, it was a tragedy. And
Yeah.
so I'm really attuned to that now. And I try to, suicide prevention and stuff like that because I know firsthand how it affects a family. And, it's, what is it, 22 veterans a day died of suicide or something like that. It's terrible. So I'm trying to do what I can to help with that. You know,
Did your dad get remarried?
he did. Yeah, he got married shortly after we moved to Sacramento. Unfortunately, at times didn't get along with my stepmother. It was kind of she was young. I was probably stubborn. Didn't get along real well. So I knew pretty much that when I was 18, I was out of there. So I started planning for that and walked into unfortunately, my dad said, well, you should join the Marines. And I wish he hadn't done that because he was my old man. And of
You did
course,
the
I
opposite, right?
was him. Yeah. So I joined the Army. I'm like, yeah, dumb dad, I'll join the Army. And then, so I did. I joined the Army. 82. I was class of 82. Joined the Army. 3
So
years.
before you get too far into that, I'm gonna pull you back.
All right.
Where was your first real memory as a kid? What's the first thing you really tangibly can say for sure? Like that legitimately happened.
Well, tragically, the day my mother died.
Well, good
Um,
job, Scabina.
no, so
That sucks.
I know it's not. Try to stay away from the Debbie Downers, but you asked. No, that's my
Yeah.
first real shock memory, I think. And then I do remember bits and pieces of, that blew the family apart, and everybody blamed each other, and it was a mess. And my dad was like, "I got to get out of here," so he took me. I was the only child. Took me
Okay.
and didn't tell anybody in the family where he was going. He took off and went out to California because I guess there was a custody dispute, all kinds of things going on, and he needed to get out of there.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I remember bits and pieces of that. I remember stopping to take pictures of road signs and how exciting it was driving it. He bought right after she died. This was 68. She died. He bought a brand new blue 68 Barracuda. Oh, that car was beautiful. Fastback.
Really?
Yeah, and I remember driving that thing all the way out to California. I remember laying in the back of that. And it had the big glass back, and I would lay in the back of it, look at the trees and clouds and stars, stuff like that. Really cool.
Huh. Why California?
I think probably it was a Led Zeppelin song or something, maybe that he heard. I don't know, or maybe that was the exciting place to go, or he just wanted to get the heck out of Dodge and went out west.
What kind of work did he do?
He started out busting tires in Oakland, and
Okay.
then he worked his way up to a mechanic, and we moved to. That's where we first met. Lived there for
So that's where you get your mechanicking skills from?
it is. Yeah, I helped
Oh
him
boy.
working on cars as I grew up. I would help him out in the garage all the time, and I kind of had an interest in that, but I do remember, all the bloody knuckles and all the bad language and all the, hey, will you hold that flashlight still and all that kind of stuff. And then he actually was surprised when I didn't want to be a mechanic. What? You don't want to follow my footsteps and be a mechanic? Well, not really. I like working on cars, but it doesn't seem like you enjoy it that much.
Interesting. Now, I'm assuming you and your dad were pretty close,
Yeah,
probably up
we're
until teenage years.
because of that. Yeah.
Hmm. Um, would between the time your mom passed and you moved to moving to California, and then getting a stepmom at some point, do you have a lot of memories of that time? Was it a good memories?
Good memories of being close to my dad. Yeah, definitely. Definitely
Well,
good.
and the reason I ask is because my mom left when I was like 6 months old, um, and my dad raised me, and he got married. I think I was probably like 7, but those years there of just him and me, or him and I, was pretty cool. Um, and like you, I didn't necessarily get along with my stepmom, and probably a lot of it was the fact that we had so many years just my dad and I. Then there's somebody else taking up this time, but
Exactly.
interesting. Um, how would you describe yourself as a kid? Good kid, bad kid?
No, I was a good kid. I always followed the rules. I was very respectful of authority, always nerdy. Back even before nerdy was cool, it seems like. So I was picked on a little bit as a teenager. I should have picked up and learned uh judo like Ray did. That's a good idea. I was watching that. I'm like, that's a good idea. Next lifetime, I might do that.
I had no idea he was big into
Oh,
karate
I didn't either.
or judo, martial arts, I should say.
Yeah.
Huh.
So
Um,
didn't I got C's and B's. I wasn't an overachiever by any means. Um, no, pretty much good Marine candidate or Army.
were Was there anything particular you were interested in when you were in school, or were you just kind of there to be there?
I didn't really know what I wanted to do. No, I was just, I guess, taking whatever classes were suggested. I did take we didn't have any computer classes yet. We did have a typing,
Back in those days.
which is ridiculous. I took typing and I still hunt and peck.
It's funny. I took typing as well, uh, and my teacher, she had these horn-rimmed glasses. She was at the end of her career. She passed me with a D to get me out of there. But I remember specifically having a conversation, telling her, "I will never type. I don't know why I'm learning this. I don't never type."
Why do I
Oh
need to
man.
do this?
So yeah, that's funny. Um,
Do you type now or are you still like this? I'm
no,
actually quick like that.
I'm good with four fingers and a thumb. I'm pretty quick. Uh, was your family religious as when you were a kid at
They
all,
were
or
they
they
were
were?
they, they were very religious. It was a very, very strict uh religion. Actually, it was I'm say actually like a cult kind of. It
Which
was
one
called
of you don't mind me asking?
Worldwide Church of God. It was led by Herbert W. Armstrong, and they ended up. I mean, they just changed things and lost a lot of people. I don't know. It ended up. It was very strict. So we probably probably close to Jewish in our.
Interesting.
It followed the old King James Bible. We had clean and unclean meats. So I grew up. I couldn't eat any shellfish or pork. Our Sabbath was from Friday night at sundown to Saturday night at sundown. We didn't watch TV or do anything like that. We would just read. Um, so it was really strict. And then they ended up making some changes, and my parents broke away from that. A bunch of people broke away and started another, I guess, chapter of that or something, and then they couldn't get along and broke away. Then we were just kind of meeting in our house, but we were very a few families, but very, very
Interesting.
religious.
Would did that continue when you moved out to California?
Well, that's mainly when it did happen. That's when
Okay,
I was growing up in Sacramento. Yeah.
gotcha. Um, Let me see. So you're picked on a little bit in high school. I mean, did you have a good core group of friends, or just kind of loner, or
No, I had a good core group of nerdy friends like myself.
you keep in contact with any?
A little bit, but not really since I joined the military and nobody else did. It seems like we have less in common. I mean, every time we got together after I moved away, it was just talking about old times. And
Yeah.
after a few years of that, there wasn't anything really to talk about anymore. It's probably not uncommon.
It was just I sometimes wondered, like I mean, like you being in the military, you you make so many friends and you go so many different places, and I don't. But there's a few people I still know that I know from when I grew up. But I sometimes wonder what it would feel like to like grow up in the same one town,
Um,
be part of that community. All your friends are still there, so you grew your entire life is spent around the same people the entire time. I've wondered what that would be like. If it would be better or worse. I don't know. I kind of intuitively think for me it would be worse, like because I like change, I like different stuff. But I don't know. I don't
I'm
know.
I just went to I had the most awesome reunion of sorts a couple of months ago. Another Marine, a friend of mine, Mark Clemens, who served with me with the 24th MEU, uh, and a couple of other guys. He had his 50th birthday, so his fiance secretly got a bunch of us together, about 5 or 6 other Marines, all she could
Oh,
round
that's
up,
cool.
and we all surprised him. And he's getting ready to retire as a cop in Ashtabula, Ohio. And his dad was a cop. All his uncles were, they're Irish, all cop the whole time. And I really got a sense for that when we went there, and I met his fiance and his family. And I mean, he just very well established there in that community. And I was a little jealous of that because it seemed like, and I remember that when we used to, we had a lot of idle time, obviously, on a 6-month float. And we would sit and talk for hours. And he would, I'd say, "What are you going to do, Clem, when you get out? Are you going to stay in?" He's like, "No, I'm getting out, just like my dad did. I'm do one tour, go back and be a cop back there." And I'm like, "Ah, okay, good for you."
Hmm.
And we would talk about that. Sure enough, he did. And then when I went out there, I got to meet his oldest son, who's 14. And I asked him, "What are you going to do?" He's like, "I'm going to join the Marines. I'm going to be a cop, just like my dad and my grandfather and all my uncles." And I'm like, how about that?
Yeah.
I just thought all
Right.
of that was really cool.
It's interesting when you see that because I just get the feeling when you spend your life in the military and then you raise kids that way too. There's there's not really I don't know. It seems like more like people's kids generally tend to do completely different stuff than their parents do if they were in the military. It's they go completely the opposite. Where a lot of times when you talk to people who are more, let's say, traditional and have stayed in the same place, and I don't know, maybe the kids don't, but it feels like the kids want to continue whatever it is their parents did, more so than at least most of the guys I know in the military. Their
Tom,
kids are doing the complete opposite.
Tom's on it. Tom Clemens. I said Mark Clemens. Sorry,
Hmm. Huh.
but that was so
Um,
good to see these guys. I hadn't seen them since '95. None of us had seen each other or really communicated with each other. And we get together. It was just like you said earlier. It was just like we were right back there again, talking
yep.
about old times. It was really cool.
When you were in high school, did you know you wanted to go in the military? What were you thinking?
Not really. Um, I don't think I really thought about it. I don't think I didn't really take things seriously. I was a knucklehead. I really didn't honestly start to get my act together and start to figure out what I wanted to do till I joined the Marines, honestly. Till I was about 28. I just kind of
There's a
bounced.
lot of years of service in the military before that. Interesting.
I didn't have the maturity. I was a knucklehead. I didn't do any bad stuff. I just did a whole lot of stupid things all the time.
Any NJPs in the army? We'll jump ahead a minute.
No NJPs, but I got
Okay.
away with a lot of stuff.
No, well, yeah. Um, huh. Did you ever consider college?
I considered it, but I didn't really have too many options because I was on my own. I didn't really have any offers for help with college from my folks. I just knew I needed to get out of there, and the military seemed like the best fit.
Hmm. No, I get that, and I sometimes like my stepdaughter is 27 now, and I remember when she left home, I was pretty hard on her for a while until it dawned on me. It occurred to me, hey, jackass, You've never done what she's done. I I went from living at home with my parents, with my parents, and I worked one summer for room and board on a ranch, and then I went to boot camp. I never had to apply for, go apply to, move into an apartment or come up with a credit history, or I just didn't do any of that stuff.
Yeah, that is a
Everything
lot
was taken care of.
different type of stress. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a different type of stress, but it occurred to me I really I did not have the experience to judge how well she was doing because I'd skipped it. I took the easy road, right? I mean, I got yelled at by drill instructors, but other than that, if I was never going to go without food, never going to go without clothes, never going to
That's,
go without a place to sleep. Yeah, it was easy in my opinion.
oh, as long as you do
Um,
what you're told, it's easy. Yep, you're right.
yeah.
Keep
So
your nose.
it's interesting too because I just read an article the other day that said that this generation is extremely pessimistic about their future. And as I'm thinking about, like, if I was 18 and was going to move out, and for example, the average rent in the United States, and this varies wildly, of course, but it's $2,500 a month. Where the hell is a kid going to come up with $2,500 a month on a consistent basis in a way that people will trust them to even enter into a contract in the first place? It's it's daunting, and I can see why kids are pessimistic these days as they're looking at their future, wondering if they're going to make it or not.
Yeah, then
I
they've
don't know.
got us old farts saying things about like, they're lazy. These generations don't want to
Yep.
work. And I actually was kind of funny. I thought I was over last year. We went to one of my wife's older brother's grandchildren's graduations in Texas, and we were there, and we were talking. And of course, her grandparents were, it got into you guys, we walked 50 miles to school, and you guys got it easy, and you don't even want to work nowadays, and it was kind of funny, and I was just kind of listening, and then she retorted, and she's like, well, look what you're leaving us. Look what your generation is leaving our generation right now. So why are you leaving
Well,
us this? What are you going to point the finger at us with what you're giving us, and we're trying to do with it what we can, And I was like, that's pretty good.
not only that, but somebody else pointed out one time. They said, "Well, you have to. I mean, if this current generation of kids are lazy, no good for nothing, right? Who raised them?
Exactly. Yep.
They don't raise themselves, so that previous generation obviously did a fairly crappy job of preparing them for the future."
Yep.
In fact, there's a book. Where is it? You ever read the book, the Fourth Turning? There it is.
No.
Yeah, this book is called the Fourth Turning. You can read that, of course, it's backwards for you or not. But
No, I see it.
anyways, it talks about how each generation, um, their approach to life and child rearing and all that stuff is how it's influenced from the previous generation, and how their kids then in turn respond to that input. So if you go back just real quickly, if you go back to, let's take World War II and forward, the adults from World War II created an environment that was very structured, very formal, very military in nature. Why? Because there was a whole generation of military guys who got college degrees, GI Bill, and all that stuff, and they created a society that matched their values and what they were used to. Go to the '60s; they're kids. Well, what were the '60s? The '60s were rebellion from that really strict environment that they grew up in. So, and then you go forward another generation, you have the latchkey kids because they were raised by a bunch of hippies from the '60s who didn't think they needed that much control, right? The control was bad. So you end up with a generation of kids who kind of Generation X kind of grew up on their own. And then they in turn, because they felt like they were kind of left to their own devices, ended up being kind of the helicopter parents of the '90s and the early 2000s, who then created these kids who find it difficult to function on their own because their parents were always hovering over the top of them. So
Yeah.
that's a very simplistic explanation, and it doesn't cover all aspects of it. I highly recommend the book, but it's interesting just how they influence each other, and usually the opposite that the next generation does in response to whatever they were given. It's just it's a fascinating read. But anyways, um, so yeah, guys, if the kids of this generation are crap, well, they were fed and mentored by somebody. We didn't do a very good job, so
Well,
we
we did
kind of
the
have some
best.
ownership.
We had no idea, and I agree with what you said. I think we completely, because I grew up, pretty strict, and I didn't enjoy my childhood as much as I would like to have, I guess. So I made sure I went way overboard with all of my
Yep.
boys and gave them everything. And yeah, we read the Dr. Spock book, which
I
was
would
talking.
be I
Huh?
would be curious to circle back in 20 or 30 years when your kids have kids, and I would bet you $100 they're probably more strict than you were to them
Huh?
in
Probably so.
response. Maybe not. Maybe they come up with a completely different way of thinking, but generally speaking, the response is to the opposite of what that generation was. So, yeah. Were you thinking at all about politics or anything like that when you were in the
No,
teen years?
never paid attention to any of it. I don't even think I knew the two parties. I just didn't care.
Interesting. Your dad wasn't political at all,
He
just making
probably,
ends meet.
right. Yeah. He probably paid a little bit of attention, but it seems like none of us paid as much attention to it all back then. I mean, we were too busy
That is
just
true.
living our lives and everything. I didn't even think I really started paying attention to politics, honestly, probably till the last decade or so.
Hmm.
And I
You
feel like
said how many? Go
I
ahead.
was better for it. I think I was
Well,
happy
yeah, no. It's
not to.
interesting how many guys in the military don't pay attention. They just, and I think part of that's because you're in the military, so there's not much you can really do other than just observe, right? So
And
it's
you're
hard to get into. Um, all right, so that's through your high school years. Knew you wanted to join the military, so you went in the army. Yep. Where'd you go to boot camp?
basic training. I went to Fort Dix, New Jersey. I was in '82. And then my first orders. Oh, then I got the MOS of 31 Mike, which was multi-channel communications. Back then it was line
Okay.
of sight, VHF and UHF, 24 channel.
Did you get that MOS based upon like you went the recruit? It was promised you from the recruiter, or do you get it just because it was available when you
Yeah,
hit
I
the
think.
training cycle?
Yeah, yeah, and probably I had a pretty good GT score, it made me. It was a better job than it wasn't a bad job. It wasn't bad. I liked it.
What were you looking to get out of the military when you went into it? I mean, was it just it gave you a career? Was it that you were looking at the benefits?
Well,
Was it
college
patriotism?
money. It was a way to pay for college, really, and that's
Okay.
why I joined the army. Was they threw a lot of money at me. I walked in there, the recruiter, and he's like, "We can give you $21,000 for college, the
In the early '80s?
education
Wow.
assistance program." I'm like, "That's a deal." And I said, "Well,
Oh
how far
yeah.
away from Sacramento can I go, and how soon can I leave?" And he's like, "Well, we'll get you out of here next week, and we can send you to Korea. How about that?" And I'm like, "Deal. Where do I sign?" So I went to Korea for the first year. Had a blast there.
Where at in Korea?
I was in Taejon. I was Camp Long. I was in the 304th Signet Battalion. I was about an hour, I guess about an hour and a half east of Seoul, east of Yongsan.
Okay.
Near,
Um,
I don't know if you know Korea that well, but it's east, out in the country. Small base or camp.
Camp. Yeah. Um, how was that year tour in Korea?
That was great. Yeah, I had a good
Did
time.
was it mostly work? Did you get a chance to get a lot of R&R? Or
Yeah, we worked hard and we played hard for sure. Drank a lot of OB beer, um, but somehow managed to not get in trouble. Thankfully, seems
it's
like
always
back then it was
it's a
easier to
freaking miracle, isn't it?
yeah,
Thank God there were no cell phones when we were young, huh?
changed about all that.
Oh. Um, what's What's the best memory that sticks out from that first year in Korea for you?
I think the brotherhood. I yeah, I had a lot of good friends there. I still keep in touch with most of them. So the brotherhood, the family that I felt. But it was different in the army because my next orders were to Fort Hood, Texas,
Okay.
and I didn't like the unit I was there at all. In the army, at least back then, I don't know much anymore, but a lot of the all right, my wife's leaving for an appointment. Uh, it's like your unit pride is based on your unit, really. It's not like the Marines. You're proud of each other, being a Marine, separate fight,
Hmm.
all that. The Army was more your unit. What unit were you with? Oh, you're with the 101st Airborne. Oh, me too. And it's kind of like that, and that's kind of how it was. So depends on unit to unit. From what I saw, morale was better than other places. So I had a blast, and it was a great unit and everything, great mission and everything. Of course, also you do notice a difference when you're deployed or when you're overseas in the military than when you're in a garrison. Stateside seems to be a lot of difference in the spit and polish and the being able to get away with as much and camaraderie and all that.
It's interesting. I haven't spent a lot of time around the army, but what I did notice was the caliber of the soldier was very much dependent on what unit they belonged to. It
Yeah,
was just, and that's one thing I think is good about the Marine Corps is it cross levels across the entire organization in many ways. The culture is far more. Now, don't get me wrong, the grunts will make fun of the pogues and the air wing makes fun of whoever, but for the most part, a Marine's a freaking Marine. Doesn't matter if they're a grunt, a pogue, or what. It's a freaking Marine and his brother, right? And I never got that feeling from the Army, at least, that they had the
no, I
same
didn't
type
either.
of yeah.
So what?
Definitely much more to the organization, the specific unit they belong to, the Rangers or whatever. Huh. Um, what was your worst memory of Korea? Besides probably being cold as shit.
Oh my gosh, that's the coldest
That
place
place
I've.
is cold.
I was.
Cold.
Yeah, yeah, that was probably it. The cold. I'd
Did you
never
have
been
good leadership?
cold growing up in California, huh?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, good point,
Yeah.
right?
Well, the
Well, how
leadership.
was your leadership in the Army?
Mm,
Was it good?
it was mediocre. It was a little bit better in Korea than it was at Fort Hood. Fort Hood was there was a lot of I'd say probably a lot of problems in all the branches of the service back in the early '80s, probably late '70s, early
Post
'80s,
Vietnam.
post Vietnam, until a lot of those draftees, retired. Had a lot of There was a lot of racial problems. There was a lot of sexual harassment. There was drugs. There was illiteracy. A lot of that just for most of the draftees.
So, I want to hang here for 1 second. When did you go in the Marine Corps?
I joined the Marines in '91.
Okay, so roughly, eh, I would say the 90s, the very early 90s were a significant transition in culture in the military. You had the guys that were in the 80s that had to deal with the issues you talked about from the draftees in the Vietnam era, and then the 90s seemed to took a turn. Well, Gulf War really turned the public's opinion, which turned the enthusiasm for the guy on active duty. But you talked about racism and sexism and crap like that in the army in the early 80s. When you first came in the Corps in the early 90s, did you have that same experience?
Not at all.
It's
No,
interesting to say that because you hear about you hear about the news all the time. There's racial issues in the military, and I can honestly say I
I never.
never sexism absolutely, that
Yeah,
men versus women for sure, but never a race thing. I never seen it ever. In fact, I knew people who were racist, but they made a very very um, intentional push at work to be the complete opposite. They were very adamant to treat everybody the same at work. Even more so than I think the average person, because I don't know. I never saw that stuff, and it always baffles me. It blows my mind that people have to deal with that bullshit because I never saw it.
no. When I'm asked about that, like I just interviewed recently for a full-time teaching position. I've been adjunct teaching, and then I just applied for full-time, and that was one of the questions. They said diversity, equity, and inclusion is really important to this college. What is your thought? What are your thoughts on that in your experience? And I said, well, I'm a retired Marine. I said, Marine Corps gets it. I said, I don't remember ever having a problem. It was always, let's get together as a team. Don't even care what color each other are, or backgrounds, or heritage, or anything, and get the job done. And maybe while we're doing it, joke around with each other about all that stuff, because there was no holes barred, and it was as far as joking around, and I never saw any problems. I never did.
That's that's what I thought. I was hoping it wasn't just my experience, but yeah, that's what I kind of figured. All right, so Korea, then you went to Hood. Uh, did you go anywhere else in the Army out of Hood, or was Hood your
But I was in
transition to?
3 years. So 2 years at Fort Hood, and that's where I met my wonderful wife in
Yeah.
'85. She was a PFC, just got there. I was a Spec 4, but I was an acting Jack sergeant, so I was pinned on sergeant, and I was first sergeant wanted me to reenlist, and I just said, no, I'm going to go to college for sergeant. I don't want to do this. And then this cute little redheaded lady shows up, PFC, and I'm like, well, I know I'm probably not supposed to fraternize with this young lady, but I'm getting out in like 3 weeks. What the heck?
Nice, nice.
So we started, and I mean, I was short. I was getting out of there, and she just got in, and we literally fell in love in about 2 weeks at North Fort Hood. We were already talking about how many children we were going to have and everything.
Really?
Yeah, and we got married like a couple months later. We got married in August of that year.
What's your first memory of Brenda?
I guess I guess when I first saw her walk across I was on the second floor, and she went walking by, and I was just like, wow. And I turned to my friend and said, wow. And he went, wow. I guess that was it. And I was like, I got to talk to her. And he's like, yeah, or, or whatever.
Interesting. Okay. Um, how long was Brenda in the Army after you got married?
I
Because
guess.
so you got out, right?
Yeah, I got out. I got right out, and I started going to college.
Okay, so you
And
did go to college for a while.
yeah, on my
Okay.
veterans, my VEEP program.
And she was still on active duty at the
Yeah.
time.
She was a wire dog, and that's how I met her, was in the field. Oh, that's a good memory. I remember watching her dragging 26 pair cable in the mud, and for every step she'd take, she'd slide back to it. She's trying to pull that. I was like, oh, that's awesome. And I went and offered to help her and was trying to help her do that. But yeah, I remember that. But so she came home when we were still there at Fort Hood. She said, guess what? I applied for WACA. And I'm like, what? What's that? She's like, White House
Waka.
Communications Agency. And I said, good luck with that. But sure enough, she got it. And then we got orders. She got orders up to the Virginia area. We lived in Dale City, and she worked at the White House and ran the White House switchboard, and also deployed when the president went anywhere. She was with WACA for probably 3 or 4 years, and she traveled.
I had a lot of interaction with the Waka crowd.
Did you?
Having served on embassy duty, and to be honest with you, I hated them people. I hated them. Why? Because they work for the White House, they got everything.
Privileged and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they got everything. But for example, I remember I was in northern India. Remember when Bill Clinton did his? Can you hear a dog barking?
A little bit.
Okay, well, let me know if it gets too loud. I'll
No,
solve that problem. I'll make sure it doesn't drown us out. But anyways, we were in northern India. Bill Clinton was doing his last tour around the world, and there were when that happens, they'll pull Marines from embassy staffs to provide security for the locations in many cases. So we all got into this hotel in this little town called Jaipur, way up north, and I at the time was a senior sergeant there, and we were at this hotel, and fabulous rooms, like $300 some odd night per diem, incredible hotel. And I remember I was sitting at the bar drinking a beer with the other Marines, and this guy come up and he goes, "Hey, are you Sergeant Scabina?" And I said, "Yes." And he was part of the White House crew, and he goes, "Hey," he goes, we run into a problem. We go, some of our Waka staff, and I didn't really know too much about him at the time. He said some of our Waka staff ended up not getting rooms here, and we really want to keep people together. I mean, he goes, "You understand, right? Unit integrity." And I said, "Man, I totally get it." I said, "What are you asking?" He goes, "Would you be willing to give up your rooms if we find you other places to stay?" I said, "Well, if you can find us other places to stay, then absolutely. So I'm not going to do your legwork for you, but sure." I said, "I get it." Well, this guy checked us into like a $20 a night dive in downtown Jaipur. And $20 a night in India don't buy you much. And then I find out that the Waka staff who I had vacated my really nice room for were all E1s and E2s. And I was pissed. I was so pissed off. I was like, those Waka people are dead to me.
Well, don't hold
Um,
that against Brenda. She's a good woman.
yeah, no. Did you live on the economy in Dale City, or was there base housing of some sort, or what?
Oh, yeah, we lived on the economy. No, I don't think they had any base housing available. Or if they did, I think it might have been
Yeah, that had to be tough.
way up by DC. I think it was at I don't know, but we weren't really interested in living in DC, so we just lived off the economy in Dale City. It
Man,
wasn't that hard.
that had to be tough. I mean, I imagine she was probably what, an E4, E5.
Yeah,
You're
but it was
going to
just
college.
I had money for college, so all my college was paid for and a little bit of extra. And yeah, it was just the two of us, so it wasn't really that bad. And we've always been really frugal. I mean, that's why we're a really good pair, good fit, because we're both
Hmm.
very frugal and pretty good at budgeting our money and making ends meet. Now, when I joined the Marines later, I guess when we get to that part of the story, then we started to, yeah, we kind of struggled when I was a young Marine because we had started collecting kids.
Yeah, they're expensive, aren't they? Um, did you go to full college full time, or did you work at the same time, or
I
what
would
was
mostly, yeah, we go to college full time and then work the summers,
what'd you do
construction.
for work?
I did construction jobs. Let's see, when we were in Texas, I worked for a tower maintenance company where I would climb cell towers and replace beacons at top and put cell towers up there. And pretty dangerous. I did that for a short while, and then I realized how dangerous that was, and I quit doing that.
Pretty good money though, isn't it?
It was pretty good money, yeah. And then when we moved up to Dale City, I worked construction. I laid asphalt. I did hydro seed. I just did various construction type jobs. I
So what was
really
your
didn't.
major in college?
It was difficult because with my communication background from the Army, it was basically just there wasn't anything really that translated in skills in the
Yeah,
outside. It was a lot harder back then. I remember after I got out of the Army, going to Kinko's or whatever and printing 500 resumes and then mailing them out to places. It was a difficult chore back then to get a job. Lot harder than it is now.
yeah. No, it's a whole different world. What was your major in college?
Business, just because I didn't really have my act together and I didn't really know what I was interested in. I was just kind of like trying to figure it out. So I took business and then I started getting interested in psychology. My dad's third wife was a psychologist. And from talking to her, I was like, that's interesting. And I've always been kind of a people watcher and fascinated with that, what makes people tick.
Hmm.
Um, so I changed my degree to psychology for a year. And then I realized, oh, this is going to take me longer because I'm going to have to take so many classes. And I changed it back and I just finished up in business. Actually, I didn't
Okay.
quite finish when I joined the Marines. I was almost there and I finished up and got my bachelor's degree in the first few years I was in the Marine Corps.
So you're in college, getting your bachelor's degree. Brenda's working at the White House. Why the Marine Corps? Why back to the military? And if you went back, why not the Army?
Well, we went back to Texas, so she got orders up here under the Reagan administration, and then Bush Senior uh, got elected, and then he would always go down to Texas all the time. So they created a detachment of WACA down at Carswell Air Force Base in Fort Worth, and we didn't mind the area here, but we certainly knew we liked Texas, so we're like, let's do that. Let's go back down there, and so we went to Fort Worth to that detachment, and then that's where we bought our first house. That's where we had our first son, and then that's where she decided to get out of the Army because she was just traveling. I mean, she was gone 2 weeks.
No, those White House guys travel a lot.
Yeah, she was always gone, so she hated that. She's like, "You're getting pretty close to finishing up your college, aren't you? I think I'll get out of the Army, okay, for a
Start
while."
making some money, buddy.
And then I was like, "Oh no, I better get this college finished up. Oh no, what am I going to do?"
Stop screwing around and make it happen.
So then, honestly, I did call the Army first, naturally, but at the time, it was Desert Storm had just started, I believe. It was, yeah.
It was January '91.
I think Clinton had a lot of budget cuts, defense cuts, or something. And I know when I called the Army, they said right now we're not taking any prior service. So
Really?
So then I called the Marines, and they said, "Well, yeah, we are. Come down and talk to us."
Well, what'd you get out of the Army as?
I got out
E5?
as an E4, but I
E4?
was acting sergeant. Yeah.
Okay. And then, so when you went and talked to the recruiter, did you have to go down a rank, or did you keep your rank,
I
or
had to go all the way down. I got PFC, but that
all
was
the way down?
Yeah, almost all the way. That's all that the Marines would offer me. They're like, the best we can do is PFC. Sorry.
That's
I mean,
Marine Corps for you. It's like, hey, you get the title. That's all you need.
I was happy they let me in. In fact, it was by the skin of my teeth that I got in, actually, because
How come?
I had to have a lot of waivers. I had a waiver because I was too old. 28, I think, was the cutoff, and I was just a little bit over that age. I had to have a waiver because I had too many dependents, because I had a son, and then I had another son on the way. And they're like, "You're not going to be able to afford a family on PFC pay, and that's the best we can give you." I'm like, And then I had gotten in some trouble when I was at Fort Hood, and had a couple DWIs. And so that for that reason, they said, "Oh, we're going to have a CG waiver for you," and I'm not sure this is going to work. And thankfully it did. It did, and they let me in, and I was so happy and thankful about that.
Were you coming back in to do the same job, or were the open contract again, or
Oh,
what were you looking to do?
Because of the waivers, they said, because you got all these waivers, we're going to just have to do open contract for you.
Really?
I was on pins and needles about that, and wasn't sure.
I was gonna say, you know what open contract meant.
Yeah.
Ooh.
But I got really lucky, I guess. Again, I guess my GT score was high enough to where they thought, there's maybe some value out of this guy. So they got my first MOS was what is it? Naval message traffic.
Okay. 2542?
Yeah, 2542.
Oh yeah.
So I'm processing naval messages through mainframe, the RICs and all of that, and then the PCs started coming out. We started having people, back then everything was done on paper. People would drop off their messages to send on paper, and then we'd have to scan it in and fix it and send it for them. And then when they got messages in, we would print them up. And if they were secret, we had to print them on yellow paper to keep track of that. Secret was red. We had to inventory all that. And then PCs started coming out, and people would bring their messages on a 5 1/4 floppy or whatever and give them to us, and then we'd stick them in the machine and process them that way, which started working better.
Yep.
And
so that was, you came in at 91, right? 90,
yeah,
91?
91.
Okay. So that was 2 years before me. All right. So you said you already had one son and one on the way. Uh, tell me about when Brenda told you that she was pregnant with your first child. What was that reaction like?
Oh, excited. Yeah.
Excited?
Top of the world. Yeah. We wanted children.
Were
We knew we
you?
were going to have three, and we were not going to stop till we had three.
Yeah, 'cause you have three, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No girls though.
Struck out. I don't know.
Yeah, all I have is girls, so I don't know what having a son would be like. Um. Okay, so excited. And then when was your second son born? Were you in boot
I
camp at
was
the time, or
in boot camp.
interesting? How was that? Did you get a phone call home?
I got a phone call, but
10 minutes.
limitations. The scene, and it was actually I was happy about it, but the heavy came over. And he's like, "You really would like to have a phone call, would you?" And I'm like, "Oh, yes." And he's like, "Yes, sir." This recruit would, and he's like, "Okay, here, let me hand you my watch. Do you see what time it is right now?" He's like, "When this, you got 10 minutes. When this is at the top of the hour, you'd better be back here. Here, carry this and go. And and you can go use that phone over there."
Yeah,
And
eight
I'm
minutes away.
like half a mile away. So the run there probably took, 2 minutes. And then, so it was crazy. And I was like, "Brandon, I got through. Hey, how you doing? Well, I got to go." And then I ran back and yeah, it's crazy. But I was happy to get to talk to her. And that was actually pretty cool.
Was that San Diego or boot camp?
San Diego.
San Diego, yeah. Oh,
And then when I got to another funny story, I guess, is when I got to Schoolhouse, 29 Palms. And I used to I would rent cars. Since I was older than a lot of other guys, I had credit cards. Pretty good little deal that I had there going. I would rent a car with my credit card, and then I'd offer, "Hey, anybody want rides I'll take you down to Palm Springs. I'll take you down
50
to
buck round trip.
wherever you guys want to go for $50 a head or something like that." And that paid for the car and then some. So I would
Nice.
do that and then run them around, and I'd take a long weekend. And I'd drive up to Sacramento and spend a couple days up there and then come back, pick them all up and bring them back or whatever. And on one of those trips, I guess something happened. I don't know. And I guess I got a phone call after a few weeks after I'd been at the schoolhouse for a few weeks. She was pregnant again. I was like, "Oh, wow, awesome." But I don't know what my orders are going to be.
Yeah.
Well, then I don't know how they made me so mad because I don't know how. I know how they do the orders because when we were at the schoolhouse, we used to
Yeah.
hand out the orders and it wasn't that difficult, but I don't know, whatever. And I ended up with unaccompanied orders to Okinawa. And I'm like, what? My middle son was born while I was in boot camp. Now I'm going to miss another son's. I don't know about this Marine Corps, man. Okay, so I went and tried to talk to them there at the schoolhouse. And what do
Yeah, I
you
don't
think?
care.
Shut up, Levoy. Get out of here. Suck it up. You're going to Okinawa. So I was getting ready to go, and my wife, she went up. She was going to stay with her folks up in Washington, up with her mom. I brought them up there. It was on my week or 10 days leave before leaving, and I had about 2 days left to go, and I was really bumming. I was like, man, I really want to do a year away from my family. I wonder if a chaplain would listen to me. I was Whidbey Island.
Oh shit, you're that guy. You're the one we hated. Like,
Are you?
no, we would talk to the chaplain.
Well, it was an idea. I was
No, that's the thing is at the time we hated it, but now when you look back, you're like, no wonder he talked to the chaplain. He's getting screwed.
And he's like, "What?" He's like, why couldn't they give you other orders? Were there other people that went? I mean, yeah, people went all over. Why did they give you on a cup? I don't know. You made somebody mad? I guess so.
Probably.
So then, I was good at that. So he he said, "Well, let me talk to some people. I know some people here. We have a Marine detachment here, actually. There's a fighter squadron training unit or something up there."
Where was
And
the chaplain at? Sacramento?
no, that was up at Whidbey Island Naval Air Station.
Okay.
It was when I was up there on leave right before I left. I was taking them up there, and I was getting ready to go. And the chaplain said, let me give you some HUMS orders, humanitarian. We'll work on a reassignment for you because this doesn't seem very fair. So I worked up there at the comm center, the Navy comm center there at Whidbey Island for a couple months until my HUMS orders came in, and they were for Camp Lejeune. So then I got
Okay.
ordered there, and
What,
was
8th Com or base?
no second FSSG
Hmm.
at the second FSSG comm center.
Yep.
For a year, and then they needed somebody with MSSG 24. So a couple of us from the comm center went there, and we did one float with them. That was in '95.
I would actually. I was no, it's not Whidbey Island. Whidbey Island in Washington, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I've been by there. I've never set foot on there, but I've been by there. It. Well, what was Brenda doing at this time? Was she a stay-at-home mom, or was she working, or
Yeah, she became a stay-at-home mom probably from then for about the next
20 years?
yeah. No, it worked out pretty good when she started doing home daycare
Okay.
when we were at Lejeune. And so since she was watching our three, she would have another 3 or 4 and, and then watch them. And it was pretty profitable for her. And she was able to, take care of our kids too. And until they got, I guess, when they were in, school age, probably second or third grade, then she was able to go back to work. But she started working when we were in Okinawa. And she started working at the elementary school they went to there, Bechtel Elementary School at Camp McTee, like Camp Courtney. And
So you went? Did you go from Lejeune to Okie?
no, I went from Lejeune to 29 Palms somehow or another.
Again?
I guess I keep ticking people off. Yeah,
Oh, that's right, because you knew Ross Cade from the base.
yeah, Ross Cade. How
Yeah.
about that? I haven't thought about that guy in forever. Yeah, I worked with him and Debbie Planaflor. I was with the base ISBO there at 29 Palms.
I remember that now because whenever we would have problems, you usually had you had the ability to kind of go over there and make things work because you knew them from before. I remember that now. And then from there, I assume you went on. You spent 3 years in 29 Palms.
About 2. Yeah, 2 or 3.
And
We
then
might.
Okie.
That was so fun too. We when I got there, that was right after. So 2542, and then my first reenlistment came up, and we'd been getting all these PCs in, and we were starting to use them, and the new MOS of 4066 just came out,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, that's what I want to do, not this, totally. So I reenlisted to do that, which was kind of stressful because I was a sergeant, and I moved into an MOS as a sergeant that I didn't know really anything about. So then I had to work with all these, supervised younger Marines who knew a lot more about this than I did until I could spin myself up.
That's an uncomfortable feeling too.
It's challenging.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that. I mean, it wasn't that difficult really. We had Banyan Vines. I kind of miss those days. Banyan Vines, Blue Mail, and all that. And then we migrated to Windows NT right before I left there. And I got orders to. That's where I got orders to Okinawa, accompanied.
So that would have been what, about 99? 98, 99?
98, yeah.
Where'd you go in Okie? The Mew, if I remember right.
No, I was with 3 MEF. I was at 7th Com, actually.
Okay.
7th Com for about a year. Then they needed me to go to the 31st Mew, still up at Hanson. And so I did that for about a year. And then I was in charge of the support team there at Camp Courtney that supported the generals and everything there in the headquarters at the 3 MEF building for the last year that I was there. And I had actually extended. I loved it. Okinawa was probably my best duty. I really liked it there. Great for the family.
Oh, yeah.
I remember Ray talking about that too. He liked perfect.
Yeah,
And
I don't know that I've run into a few guys or gals that were there single and didn't like it, but I don't think I've run into a family yet who didn't thoroughly enjoy it.
right. 29 Palms was pretty much like that too. I didn't mind it as married, but I know a lot of the single guys are there don't care for it.
Well, yeah, and then of course they put all the liberty restriction in place where you couldn't have a car, you couldn't go on liberty until you've been there for like 60 days or something, which was just I always thought was a poor. If you take everything away, then when they do something stupid, there's nothing to take away anymore. You have to resort to administrative NJP. At least if you gave them liberty and they screwed up, you could restrict your liberty. I don't know. That's why I looked at it. But where'd you live at in Okie? Oh, with the family up on McT.
Yeah. We lived in Accordia Towers
Okay.
for about a year, and then we're on the list for McT, and we got a little duplex there.
The
And
towers were nice though.
they were okay, but I missed having a yard. I wanted to have like at least a driveway where I could work on the car, do things or whatever. I don't know. I didn't like, although we were on the first floor, so it wasn't really that bad, but I didn't like the tower life that much. But T was a lot better, especially the kids walked to school. Brenda walked to work right there. She worked at Bechtel. I was when I was at Courtney, it was a short drive. Driving to Hanson was kind of awful for the first 2 years.
Yeah, that would be. So your kids were probably anywhere between what 4 and 10,
Yeah, sounds about
roughly
right.
in there.
Yeah.
Do they have memories of it, or is it kind of
Oh,
like,
yeah. Yeah, they loved it. In fact, they're all really into the Japanese culture now. They're all into anime. My youngest even wants to move there and teach Japanese. Or he just got into he got his chemistry degree, and he wants to
really?
practice over there. Yeah, he just really wants to move to Japan. They
No
really
shit.
fans of the Japanese culture.
Wow. Do you speak the language yet?
A little bit, I think.
Huh. All right. So that 3 years Noki with the Mew, did you do any like real world's response, or was it all just kind of preparation for real world stuff?
Yeah, not when I was with the 31st Mu. When I was with the MSS G24 in '95, we were pretty much just doing regular 6-month floats back then, just Liberty cruises, Liberty port after Liberty port. It was great. But then the Bosnian conflict started happening. And then I don't know if you remember when Captain Scott O'Grady got shot down in '95 over Bosnia. We were so mad because we had so many awesome Liberty ports scheduled, like Palma. We were supposed to stop in Palma, which is one of the best.
Oh, that would be awesome.
And everybody was on holiday. And the day before we were going to pull into Palma, he gets shot down. So we got a steam to the Adriatic. And the whole rest of our float was not as much fun. We just did gator squares off the coast of Bosnia. And then obviously, they went and rescued him and stuff. And
I think it was probably you who was telling me that he was not all that appreciative for being rescued too, if I remember right. Like he wasn't a very good person about. He kind of self-centered, and am I remembering that right?
He seemed like a privileged type of guy to me. I remember, although he was pretty good about giving the Marines credit.
Yeah, that's cool.
He's an interesting book. You should, if you haven't read his book, it's pretty interesting, short read. It's Home with Honor or Return with Honor.
Yeah.
Crazy story I had. Actually, he said he wouldn't have made it. He got really lucky because he said he would have ran out of water. He drank his water too fast, but it rained. Luckily for him, and he was able to get water. But how he stayed away from them because they were trying to find him. It's crazy.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. So that brings you up to about 2002, and then that's when you got orders 29 Palms, right? Again.
Yeah. So no, 2000.
2000.
So the new MOS of 0689 came out.
It's actually 9/11/21 or 9/11/2001.
Oh, was
when they
it?
released. When they released the message, it was. I think the time of the message is like the. It's within like an hour or two of the actual impact of on the towers.
Huh. I was working with Maria Thompson at the time.
Really?
Yeah, we were both there at 3MEF. I was a staff sergeant. She was a gunny. And she's the one that told me about it. She's like, you see the message about this new MOS? And I'm like, no. She's like, you should take a look at that. That's pretty cool. So I looked at it and I was interested. And we were like, I was one of the first, I think it was 26 or 28 of us that were the first to jump in to that.
Yeah. So it's funny because at the time I was a 4067, and of course because of the NMCI they were doing away with the 67s. And I remember Master Gunny Black, Master at the time, but had called, like, forget who the monitor was. It was a Master Guns of some sort. Well,
Combs?
anyways, it wasn't Groby. Maybe it was Groby. I don't know. Anyways, I remember calling. The guy has on speakerphone, and Master Guns Black talks to him for a little bit, and he goes, "Well, he's standing right here if you want to talk to him." And he goes, "Well, what do you want to do?" He goes, "You're 67. That's a dying breed. You got to do something different." And I said, "Well, that's part of the reason we're calling is because they were coming out with the 89s, and then what was the EKMS, the EKMS MOS?
Uh,
I can't remember what the number was.
sure.
Anyways, I didn't know what the hell either one of them was, to be quite honest with you. I didn't know what information assurance was, and I didn't really know what EKMS was. In fact, I probably had a better idea what EKMS was because it was the vault stuff, right? And he goes, "Well, what do you want to do?" I said, "Fine, I don't know. Something else." I was a staff sergeant and didn't know his job because I'd been on embassy duty for so long, and they're doing away with it. So I remember saying, "Hey, I picked one." I said, "Well, information assurance," and then I ended up getting orders to the school outside of that, but um, not know anything about it. Had no clue what it was
Neither.
going to be.
It was a leap of faith because I was like, what the heck is this? None of us really knew what even that meant. And I was
Yep.
like, I wonder what we'll be doing because I really, really liked networking. I mean, I was a 4066. I'd been to advanced networking training, 4068. So that was my secondary. And I was loving that. Building networks, all that. It was really fun. I was like, man, I don't know if I like this. I don't know if I want to jump into a job. Let's give it a whirl.
Yep. Try something different. In fact, I remember I was at Paris Island at the time, and I'd made the lap. It was September of 2001, and sometime around the new year, I called the monitor. No. It was the Ockfield sponsor I had a conversation with the first time. Anyways, called the monitor. Gunny. I almost had his name for a moment. Anyways, I
Holmes?
called him and I said, "Hey, you know, I had this MOS out for a while. I'm not doing the MOS." I said, "What's the plans for movement?" And he goes, "Well, if you want to move, you can go to the schoolhouse." Schoolhouse? I don't know. I already told you I don't know what I'm doing here. I have no idea. I said, "Why would you send me to the schoolhouse?" And I remember I talked to Master Guns Black, and Master Guns said, "Well," he goes, "think about it this way." He goes, "Nobody knows what they're doing because nobody knows what the job is. And is what better place could you possibly learn than having to teach it?" They're like, "Okay, that kind of makes sense."
True.
Yeah.
So
When did you get to the schoolhouse?
I guess it was 2002, and then
Summer or
I wasn't there that long. I guess I was there 2 years, a year, and then I had finished up my bachelor's degree earlier when I was a sergeant, and
oh, you're going for the AFIT program.
yeah, so I saw
Yeah.
there was a message about the IASP Information Assurance Scholarship Program,
Hmm.
and you needed to have. I was surprised they were accepting enlisted, and you had to be, it was NSA funded. Just needed to have a bachelor's degree and a few other things or whatever. And so I applied for that and was really, really lucky and got that.
Yeah, because I want to say there were what 4 of you that first year, wasn't it? It was you,
It was five.
Mass
No,
Sergeant 5.
the first year. Then there was 3 of us the year I went. We were the second batch.
Who was the 2 with you?
It was me. There was 3 of us. It was me, Artie Crawford, Master
Crawford,
Gundy
yep.
Crawford retired, and then Bill King. He retired as a
Oh, that's right, King.
yeah.
I remember King now. Whatever happened to King?
He lives in Washington State now. He's in Eastern Washington State.
Huh. Had a
We
big
have
old head.
keep in
That dude
touch
had
with
a big head,
He was
didn't he?
he was a
Huge
big
head.
guy. Yeah, he
Yeah.
did have a big
Okay. Yeah. So I remember when we got there, it was you, me, Irene Haynes,
head. Cleet Erickson.
Cleet Erickson. That's right. Because Cleet wasn't there very long. He got picked up for warrant officer.
Did yeah.
And then it was you, me, and Irene. And then I hope I'm not forgetting people, but we had a couple guys come in later. But then, of course, we worked with. Yeah, my memory's going.
No, me
Worked
too.
with. Not Shingler. Man, my memory's gone bad. So close to remember their names too because they were legends. Damn it. Who was the gunny that taught IP addressing? Starts with S, didn't it? He liked the ballroom dance.
Oh yeah. Big guy. What was his name?
Shifley, no.
Yeah. Was Shifley.
Was it
I think
Shifley?
Yeah.
Was it Shifley?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember Shifley helped out.
Bay.
DeBay helped out, and Lewis, Chad
Lewis.
Lewis. And then later, we picked up a couple sergeants that came in to help out. I have to admit, I can't remember the names off the top of my head. And then, of course, Master Sergeant Ron Marion came out there. But yeah,
I left.
yeah,
I think
you
or
already
was he?
left, right? Because I think he replaced you actually,
Oh.
maybe. Anyways, um, so then you went and did 2 years at the Air Force Institute of Technology in Iowa, right?
Was it Wright-Patterson Air Force Base? Yeah, in Ohio.
Ohio, that's right.
Such a cool deal. I didn't even put on a uniform for 2 years. Oh, I guess on Fridays we had to wear our Charlies. That's right.
Rough life, right?
Yeah.
All right, so 29 Palms. Because I remember you lived down the street from me on base. Then AFIT. Where'd you go after AFIT?
McNosk.
That's right. Okay.
I think that was another good thing about that scholarship was they thought, wow, you're learning some good stuff and getting your master's degree. Let's go ahead and put you at the McNosk.
I
And
wonder if they still have that program?
I haven't looked. I'm not even sure.
It was great. It was a great idea. It was a great program.
Yeah, it was.
It
wasn't only the military. I know there were a couple civilians that were going through it too.
Oh, really?
And they ended up doing I think we had to do a 3-year payback, and they had to do theirs with NSA. But it was a really good gig because they got the degree, then they got 3 years of experience with NSA.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, they got a good job.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, and that's a resume builder right there, right? Plus, just the people you meet and the people you know. Okay, so you went to Quantico from there to the McNosk. And if I remember correctly, that's where you retired out of, correct?
Right.
How many years you did 6 or 7 there, didn't you? Before you retired?
I retired in 2010.
2010. You left in, so it was only about 4 years there. Now, when you moved to Quantico there, or to the McNoss, is that when you bought the place that you have now?
Yeah.
Man, you gotta have that place paid off almost.
What's that?
Said you gotta be almost mortgage free here pretty soon.
Oh, my wife's amazing. She's paid off everything. She's amazing. As far as budgeting and what she's done with all her monies, I can't believe what she's been able to allow us to do.
No,
I
that's
think
awesome.
very little credit except for working, but she's like
Just do
taking
what you're told.
here, put it here, put it here, put it here. We never, we didn't have to, we just we live very humble, easy lives, and didn't have to have all the toys that everybody has. We never bought it. I think I maybe had 2 new cars in my whole lifetime. We never spent money on things.
Where did that come from?
That came from right after I joined. I started realizing why they made me sign why I needed a waiver, because as a PFC with 3 kids,
Oh,
that was rough. So thankfully, Camp Lejeune, that was a very inexpensive place to live. We lived out the back gate, got a little trailer out there in Hubert, lived in that thing. And, all we could afford was our van that my wife shuttled the kids around with, and a motorcycle. I had a little Yamaha Seika 400 that I had to drive to the comm center from the back gate, to and from every day, rain or shine or snow. I had to it was all I had was that motorcycle. So we just sucked it up. And then I was like, okay, this sucks. I gotta get promoted. We got to get into base housing. Because at the time, the list for Lance Corporal housing was a year and a half or something like that. But for corporal, it was like, I think you got immediately in. So I'm like, dude, I gotta get promoted. So I got real motivated and started studying for the boards, and I went to Marine of the Month board. And then I did pretty good, and I went again and won it, and went again and won it. Then I got to go to Marine of the Quarter. I think I won that. And then they had a meritorious corporal board, and I got to get corporal. So I went to that and got that.
Damn.
Corporal, and then boom, we moved straight into base housing, and then we were living large.
That had to be tough, as with 3 kids on PFC and Lance Corporal pay. I was just thinking about something else I wanted to ask you. It caught me for a second. Do you? I'm making some assumptions here. I'm assuming that because you didn't have a lot of money, you didn't have a lot of the frills that people generally can afford when they start having kids later, right? Yeah, assuming you didn't have like a lot of the nice stuff and do a lot of vacationing and stuff like that. So what I'm getting at here is your family always struck me as very tight. Yeah, very, very much not just a husband and a wife and some kids, but a husband, a wife, and some kids. That was a family unit that hung together and played together and happy together. Do you think that having to make ends meet like that contributed to that? Just having to be closer?
Totally. Yeah, you don't need money to be happy. We were so happy, and we did everything together, and we would have vacations once or twice a year, but they were never anything extravagant. We would just hop in the car and go on a road trip. We did that all the time. I mean, my wife and I were road warriors already. It wasn't uncommon for us to jump in the car from Fort Hood and drive to San Diego on a 4-day weekend. Drive 24 hours there, spend 2 days there, drive 24 hours back or whatever. Because back, gas was cheap, it wasn't hard or whatever. We did that all the time. So
you didn't have somebody harassing you about liberty risk and what was your driving plan and all that crap. Oh yeah. Oh, when life was easy. I still remember. I remember doing the staff academy as a gunny, and we were coming up on. It was some holiday, and the sergeant major or whoever was running the course, I forget, but it basically said we got vehicle inspection in the morning. You got to turn in your safety sheets. Your what? We're all gunnies. If you're already stupid by this point, then you're stupid. There's no amount of protection gonna keep you from being dumb. And oh, by the way, I used to do this all the time in Paris Island because they would have us do the vehicle inspections and have the Marines like write out their stuff, what they were going to do for the weekend. I remember so often I'd be like, so what happens when the guy tells you he's not going to do nothing, but he decides to at 1631? You think he's not going? Of course he's going to go. I hated that paperwork drill, all that crap that they made you do all the time. It's like they're adults. Treat them like adults and they'll act like adults.
Yeah, that's one of the things I don't miss about the Marines.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
like when I was in Okinawa, I had one time when I was on a Crocodile 2000 exercise in Australia. I had 3 Marines that were under my charge that got NJP for drinking underage.
Let
And I
me
was like,
guess, it was your fault.
and it was my fault. Yeah, they almost fired me from there and sent me back. Bad fit rep. Thankfully, that didn't happen because we were doing a good job there. But that man, I got a lot of crap for the 3 Marines getting that NJP, and I'm like, what? Drinking underage? You've got to be kidding me. These are Marines.
Yeah. What do you expect them to do?
Yeah.
Realistically. All right. So you with the Marine Corps in 90, that's 10, 20. Did you do the full 20 or did you count were you able to count your Army time towards
Yeah.
retirement?
Counting my Army time, I'm like over 23.
Okay.
I guess I did 20 in the Marines.
So what's in your experience, what's the biggest difference between the Army and the Marine Corps?
Oh, let's see. I can always speak to how it was back then, but I got to say morale. Yeah, morale. I don't know. There's a whole lot of things. It's hard to even say one. It's just the Marines get it. It's just the culture. The big part about the culture absolutely separates the Marines from all the other branches, and I think they all know it.
I wonder what the culture like in Space Force. Well, anyways, um,
Because you
were there
notice
some?
they're all making changes. I know they've been trying. The Army especially has been trying. Now they've got the hoo-ah or whatever kind of thing, and they never did that when I was in the Army. That's something new.
Really?
They said, well, the Marines are doing this.
Huh?
Let's do that. I think
I
I
didn't know
heard.
that was a new thing.
Yeah, that's new.
Huh?
It may have been in particular units, but it wasn't Army wide. My wife and I, when that started happening, we're like, "What's this hoo-ah crap? What that stuff
What are you
is?"
drunk?
And then I remember asking my wife, "Actually, when is the Army's birthday?" I don't even know because it
Wow,
wasn't a thing. It wasn't even a thing.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's so inculcated in the Marine Corps culture. Like, if you ask a Marine and he doesn't know the Marine Corps birthday, either A, he's not a Marine, or
Right.
B, he's going to get destroyed. And everybody within a half an hour, everybody on that entire base will know that guy doesn't know the Marine Corps birthday. That's all there is to it. His life sucks.
Did you see they're building Ton Tavern? They're going to build Ton
Yes, that
Tavern.
is so cool.
So
That
cool.
is so cool. That'll be worth going back to see. I wonder how. I wonder where they're getting their details from and like how they build it. If how closely to what it was supposed to be at the time. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Were there any similarities between the Army and the Marine Corps that you found?
I mean, yeah, like I said earlier, I think depending on the unit, if you were in a unit that was, good and morale was better, depending on the unit that you were in, but it really depended on, I guess, probably your MOS and what unit that you were in. It certainly wasn't Army wide. I mean, it may be now, it just wasn't then.
Did in those 23 years, did you ever consider doing something different at some point? Like, you know what, I'm doing something completely different. Well, other than the first after the Army where you went to college, but after that, did you ever think, this is crap, or were you pretty much resigned or decided that this was a full time, long term career?
Not until I joined the Marines, and then once I got into the Marines, I was really happy that they let me in. That I got back in, and I loved it, and I
Yeah,
never regretted it from there.
never had it. Did you ever think about doing any of the officer programs?
When I got my degree in '95, actually, I finished it up right before I deployed, and I was on that med float in '95. when I got my degree, and my wife sent it to me in a box full of balloons. I got this box, and I'm like, why is this thing so light? This is the light. And I open it up, and it's like helium balloons
That's
with the
funny.
degree attached to it. And it was like, congratulations, here's your degree. And I was
Nice.
pretty proud of that. And then I started thinking about officer programs, but I had just gotten into the 46. I just reenlisted with 4066, and I really liked it. And the officers that I talked to, I said, do you think that I'll be able to stay in this MOS? Do you think I'll be able to do this? And they said, no,
Totally different ball game. You
barely.
would think that it would make sense, but there's no sense to be made of it. Totally different ball game.
Yeah, and so that turned me off to it. I'm like, I don't want to be a grunt officer or a supply officer, something I don't like. I really like what I'm doing right now, and I think I'm going to succeed pretty well at it. So I'm just going to keep doing this. So I'll keep. And then I did think about warrant officer, and I applied for warrant officer once when I was in Okinawa, and I didn't get accepted into that. But later on, I think it all worked out pretty well with the scholarship and everything like that. No regrets.
It's funny how at the time these things, especially when they don't work out the way you want them. Generally, if it works out the way you want to, there's no issue. If it doesn't work out, it's so monumental, it's so big, it's so dramatic. Give it 5 years, you look back, you're like, it actually worked out better anyways. I mean, rarely do I look back at my life and think, man, if that had only worked out differently, I would prefer that if that had happened. You know what I mean? It's always, well, you know what? In the end, it worked out better, I think.
Yeah.
As you approached retirement, what were your thoughts on it?
Well, I mean, I almost reenlisted. They were
Because you
like,
didn't have to get out; there was a choice.
I was in zone for Master Gunny, and I knew I was going to get out because I'd talked to the monitor, and they said, if you get selected for Master Gunny,
Where
we're
are you
going
gonna
to
go?
Mar 4 Res down in New Orleans. And I said, no, my kids are well situated here in Virginia. They're all in high school.
Oh man, you missed a bullet right there because that would have been no that was well after Katrina. Never mind.
It was it was probably 2008.
Yeah.
And so I decided I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be a geo bachelor or take the kids there. It gets harder. The moves get a lot harder when the kids get older. I was like, no. And I mean, I crunched the numbers, and I gave up probably $800 or $900 a month retirement for the difference between E8 and E9 retirement. But I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm excited to get out and see what else this next chapter of my life is. So I hand delivered a letter up to the board because it was there at Quantico. Hand delivered it up there and said, please don't look at me for Master Gunny. I don't want it. I'm retiring. And they still selected me. So I don't even know. And I think it's because they really wanted to dangle that in front of me and go, we know nobody else. But here it is now. You want to go to Mar 4 Res?
Sure, you really want to retire? Oh yeah.
No deal.
So as you were approaching retirement and you knew you were going to retire, did you know what you wanted to do afterwards, or were you kind of like, we'll see where life takes me?
No, I think I've figured it out by then. I wanted to teach. I was terrified when I was at the schoolhouse. I had never taught before, and I was shy. I was I think I lacked confidence because it was a new MOS. Like you said, I didn't know very much. It's really difficult to try to go teach something if you don't know what you're doing. I knew it was gonna have all these stump the professor kids coming in there that knew everything about networking, more about networking than I did, because I was still kind of new at networking even. Or I had done other things. And but I guess the more that I did it, I got a rush out of it. I kind of liked that. I really liked the interaction, and I liked the feeling. Also, I'm a knucklehead, and it took a long. I don't know how many times it took me to learn subnetting. That thing used to kick my butt, and I'd always get like almost there, especially VLSM. I'd be like, "Oh, I think I've got it." Oh,
No.
no, no. And it took, I don't know how many different times people to explain it to me before somebody explained it. In fact, I think it was
Definitely.
Shifley who did it the right way.
That dude could teach.
With the goalpost moving and all this, and I'm like, boom, bingo, I got it. And I
Yeah,
was
that dude could teach.
kind of like that. I kind of liked how that's pretty neat how you can. Well, if I could learn, if somebody could teach me something, huh? Maybe I could then in turn figure out how to teach other people. And I just kind of I like the challenge of that. So ever since then, I thought, well, I think I'm going to teach. I really think I probably when I retire, I'd like to see if I can get a teaching job. So that's what I.
Sorry, I was
Yeah,
thinking about that and thinking about your time at AFIT. Lopez was the master sergeant I was thinking
yeah,
of. Lopez.
Lopez.
Was he the year before or the year after you?
That guy's so funny. Year before me.
Where holy smokes, where did he end up? Do you know?
He went back to Affit. That guy was so funny. He was like he had like he sounded like a gangster from Brooklyn when he talked. He's like,
Yeah, he did.
and then I owe everything to him for getting me into Affit. He really helped me with my application, talked to people there. He helped coordinate that. I owe a lot to him for getting me in there. But then he loved it. He loved academia. He comes from I don't think anybody in his family went to college or whatever. He's the first one to go. And then after he retired, he got a job back at Affit, and he's still back there at Affit. He went and got his PhD. Yeah, his PhD, and now he's a professor there at Affit.
Damn. Okay, so you knew what you wanted to do afterwards. Let's reflect on the Marine Corps a little bit. What's your favorite memory from the Marine Corps? And by favorite, it can mean duty station. It can mean satisfaction of the job. Just when you think back at your time in the Marine Corps, what does your mind go to first?
The Marines, just being around the Marines, just that culture, that family, that sense of that you always know things are going to work out, that you can always count on everybody, that you can depend on everybody. Those core values. JJ did tie buckle. Huge. That stuff is huge. I still talk about that. I don't know. I'm one of those professors that probably rambles too much, but I want to give the students at the college I teach at, I want to give them something valuable besides not only, I feel like my job as a professor is to, help them better themselves to, have a good life, not only with the subject I'm teaching, but with any experience that I have. So sometimes every single class, I'll break off into the JJ did tie buckle, and I write it up on the whiteboard. And I'm like, you guys heard of soft skills? And I always go soft skills because it's not soft skills. These are like core character identifiers. These are important things. And I go over the JJ did tie buckle, and I'm like, you guys need to think about this. This is stuff that is invaluable. You can teach anybody to do anything, but if you don't have these core values, if somebody doesn't have these core values, they're not going to be, these are so important. I always talk about that kind of stuff. And I don't know, some of the kids roll their eyes, but then there are some that are taking notes, and I'm like, yeah. I remember we had on the, I remember as one of the Facebook groups that we have, and I remember there was a young Marine that was getting ready to get out, and he said he had a job interview, and he said, anybody can give me some help on what I should talk about on this interview. And I remember you and other people were going, oh, well, talk about this, certifications, and make sure you talk about your, what you can do. And then I said, yeah, those are all good. I agree. But don't forget that JJ did tie buckle, because when you're doing your resume, those are the things that jump out. If you can put those kind of things in there, and then certainly in your job interview, if you talk about the different things, speak to your character like that, those are the reason people hire veterans, is those values.
Makes sense. Well, and I would say probably if I was offering advice back then, I was probably very focused on the technical aspect of it, And I'll say, from my experience now, my current job, I don't necessarily I'm not in a management position, but my last one I was, and for the most part, I've always have been. Um, I, I wasn't so much worried about the technical skills of somebody. I mean, don't get me wrong, I wanted a baseline. I wanted them to have a baseline capability that I could rely upon confidently to get the job done. But I was honestly, when I would do an interview, I would typically set up the interview. It'd be me, and then a couple key folks from the job that worked for me, and then I would do like the introduction interview, ask a few basic questions, and then I would let them go for it. And I did that because, not one, that they were the people that person was going to work with, and number two, I wanted to see how well they would mesh, because I, inevitably, the problem I would have with somebody not was because they were stupid and couldn't do the job. It was because they couldn't people with other people. It was always a people problem. It was never the guy said the guy said he knew how to do Cisco, but he obviously had never seen a router in his life. It was the guy knows a router back and forward, but he's a complete jackass to everybody around him. And that's so my interest was always in the people. And I've learned that since then. Technical, whatever. I mean, whatever. But I want to know about the person, because the person is what's gonna either make me work long hours or not work long hours for whatever stupid choice they make, or a good
Yeah,
choice.
I always tell people too. I think that when you're putting your resume together, you want it to show your character. So I always say, is whatever type of volunteer work or anything that you have, put it on there, because that stuff, I haven't done a lot of hiring, but I've done some in the past. And I know when you're looking at resumes, they start to look the same after a while. Oh, college degree. Okay, college degree. Oh, other college degree. Oh, and experience. Okay. But then I'd like to know what this person is like. So then you see things like, volunteer at the church to do blah, 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 or, Eagle Scout, or, any kind of things like that you could start to think, man, this is not an individual who just sits on their duff. They are doing things in their community. They care. This is a good, wow. It
Well,
really shows.
you said it already. I mean, if you got 10, if you get 10 interviews through HR that come to you, those 10 people are qualified technically to do the job. Otherwise, their resumes wouldn't reach your desk. But when you run across the resume where the guy, I don't know, he volunteers at the SPCA or whatever, whoever on that board that's interviewing that person who also loves cats and dogs is going to remember that resume. It has nothing to do with the fact that what their experience is. That they made a connection, a personal connection, based upon what it is they liked and they liked or whatever. So no, I think you're right. That's important. If nothing else, it creates a personal connection between the interview and the interviewee. And I guarantee, if you have to do 10 interviews a day, the one you're going to remember is not the one where the guy answered the OSPF question correctly. It's going to be the one where you talked about cats for 5 minutes, or whatever it is that shared interest you had. So I know that's good. Looking back at the Marine Corps and military service in general, is there anything that stands out that was negative that you didn't like?
No, no, not really. I'm very thankful for everything that I learned in the military. I actually, I am, I am, I have had a little bit of trouble adjusting. I think, probably, especially here recently. This isn't anything against the military, or isn't it a bad thing, really? I don't think, but I think it's probably it may be common. I don't know. But I've actually been talking to VA counselors about like anger management, because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've always been a real easygoing guy. I really have. But as I'm getting
Yeah,
older,
that
maybe
surprises me.
maybe it's the crotchiness, get out of my yard kind of thing or something. But then also, I've had trouble adjusting a little bit to civilian people and how there's a lack of courtesy, lack of respect. Just, I don't know. I blow my top a lot with like road rage when I've got somebody riding my ass and I'm like, you kidding me, man? You know, I go from zero to wanting to choke somebody. And my wife has pointed that. She's like, that's not good. You got to talk to somebody about that or whatever. So I have been getting, talking about that. And I wanted to bring it up because it probably is not uncommon where you're, especially a career spent in the military, where you're so used to the structure, you're so used to the respect and the courtesy and the ability to like take care of anything at any given time. If you're ever on base or even off base and you see another Marine doing something, hey, Marine, come over here. What are you doing? You know, you could take care of it right then. And he's going to be like, yes, sir, I will, or, you know, whatever. I know you get adjusted to that. And anymore, now I get so mad when I see somebody littering and I literally like want to go snatch them up and say, pick that back up or, you know, whatever kind of thing.
Right.
And I know it's stupid, but I do. So I've been talking about that and actually going to, there's a group session that I've done with other veterans where we get together and we talk about that and experiences or whatever. And that's been helping me really more than anything is the awareness of that, hey, I blow my top. I got to think about that. And when it's getting ready to happen, think about it, figure out why it's going to happen. Is blowing my top or saying something or snatching that person up going to fix it? No, it's probably not, because I have you know, it's not. It's going to turn into a fist fight or something. It's
Right.
not going to end well. So why would I do that? So stop doing that. Stop, think about it, put the firewall in between here and here, and then take, you know, not, you know, handle the situation. Just that little bit of awareness has been helping me a lot with that. I'd mention that in case anybody else is having issues with that, because it's probably not uncommon with a career spent in the military. And then, I mean, I still find I've been retired for like, what, 15, 14 years now, and it's still experience.
Now, when did you retire?
2010.
2010, okay.
I was really rough around the edges the year I retired. The first few years, wow. But I've, you know, as far as like high strung, you know, loud, vulgarity, you know, all that. And it was funny because my first job after I retired, I worked for Northrop Grumman as a technical trainer, and I taught like taught a week long cybersecurity awareness course, and I did a penetration testing course and a incident response course. I taught a bunch of different courses, and I try to make them as technical as I could. That's always been what I've wanted to do. And I learned that from the schoolhouse. I was like, nobody's going to want to look at PowerPoints. Everybody wants, at least I do,
want to do
hands-on. So I always try to do a lab, talk to you, walk you through something in a lab, and then give you something to do, and you do it in the lab or whatever. So I did that at Northrop Grumman, but I was really, for some reason, because we were under training, we fell under HR. So there I am up in there in HR in the ivory tower, with all these HR ladies and stuff running around. And here's Terry right out of the Marine Corps. And I mean, I wish I had a nickel for every time I see ladies pop their heads up and is that? Well, oh, it's Terry. Oh, my gosh,
Terry. That's that guy. What were you? Did you have any when you were about to retire? Did you have any expectations going into retirement about what work would be like, what life would be like after retirement, or was it? Did you go into it with just like ready to experience it, or did you have like definitive ideas about what it was going to be like compared to what you had been doing?
No, I really had no idea. I mean, I had a little bit of time between the Army. I guess I had 4 years between the Army, 5 years, but I was in the reserves
Going to college. Yeah.
College, but I was, I mean, it feels like I've been in the military my whole life, so I really didn't know anything else. So it was an adjustment period. Was it for you as well?
Two things stand out for me. One is at least on active duty, I didn't accumulate hobbies or pastimes, because there was always something to do. There was always some inspection coming up, or you had to swing by the barracks to check on the Marines. You had to. There was always something, and there was the idea that then let's say you took up, I don't know, fishing, right? So then you get a boat. Well, then you get a PCS with a boat, and you just do crap. So I didn't do a lot of the hobbies, and it occurred to me like right after I retired, it's like, man, it's like I got time to do stuff. Nobody's calling me Saturday about work. You know what I mean? Nobody cares about me until Monday morning, and so I got time to do stuff. Now that was weird to like start pursuing hobbies. The other thing I would say that, and this took me a while. This actually took me probably about 5 years to figure out. Was in the military, because everybody has such the same shared experience and the same culture. Even something as simple as if you say, "Hey, how you doing, man?" Like, "Hoorah." Well, I can tell from your tone, I can tell from your volume, I can tell from your body language that whether that means, "Hey, I'm doing awesome," or that means "fuck off," or "Hoorah" can mean many different things. And the way you communicate in the military, there's a lot of you can assume a lot, and you can assume that they understood what you said because you all speak the same language, right? And it took me a long time on the outside to realize that two things. Number one, I made a lot of assumptions about what people were thinking that were not accurate because we weren't in the military. We didn't have the same shared experiences. If I said something, it didn't necessarily mean the same thing to that person that I was talking to. I did. Hey, I need.
It's a generational thing too.
No, it's a generational thing, but it's a cultural thing too, and just it took me a long time to figure out that I needed to be a much better communicator. I couldn't say, "Hey, go take care of that." Well, take care of that. What does that mean? Because I'd say a lot of times I'd tell somebody, "Hey, why don't you go take care of that for me?" Okay, cool. And then they'd do something, and I'd be like, "That's not what I meant." Well, you told me to take care of it. Well, I assumed you thought that when I said take care of it, I meant this. Well, there's a problem, right? There you assumed. So it took me a long time to figure out two things. Number one, I really needed to be a better communicator in explaining what it is I wanted from people, or wanted them to do for me, or what I wanted from them, or whatever. And number two, this was really eye-opening for me, was realizing that a lot of the times, whatever it is I was thinking I wanted to communicate was not what was coming out of my mouth. Because then on the other side, they have to hear what you said, and then they're going to take their own perception on what it is you meant and you intended, and which is hard enough when you're just talking about that conversation. But you also have to realize that there's the thought process that goes on, and there's what comes out of your mouth, and the two aren't always the same.
Totally.
So it
Yeah.
took me a long time to become far better at communicating. Number one, to realize that I really needed to think through what it is I was saying, and then articulate it in a way that matched, and then say, "Hey, well, I just told you something. Tell me back what you just heard," which was worse than a game of telephone, right? Because then they tell you something like, "How the hell did you get that from what I said? Are you stupid?" But no, it's because I was a shitty communicator, to be quite honest. Or I made assumptions because I could make assumptions because it was a safe environment where everybody understood what I meant.
Some of that is in the culture too. As Americans, we're very, very wishy-washy. I worked with my last job. I worked with a lady who was from, I think she was Russian linguist, or she was somewhere in Eastern Europe, and she said she has such a trouble with our American culture because we sugarcoat everything. She says
Mhm.
it's so frustrating when a boss will say, "Well, gonna need you to come in tomorrow," or we'll do
Just tell
this or
me to
whatever.
come in.
And then when it comes down to evaluation time, but wait a second, did you want, huh? You didn't
Yep.
communicate that, because our culture is very soft spoken. We want to be too very easy. A lot of cultures aren't like that, like
Hmm.
German culture, a lot of the European cultures, very upfront, direct. Boom, what you
Yep.
say is what you get. People think that's rude. It's just direct.
Mhm.
We're too soft spoken, I think, a lot of times.
Yeah. No, I agree. those were the two things I think that really jumped out at me the most. Um, now I will say when I first retired, I was at Camp Lejeune, so I was still surrounded by Marines, and I was still surrounded by people I knew, and that was a good transition. Coming out here was quite a bit different because surprisingly, I do know a couple people from the Marine Corps out here. Small world, right? Um, but for the most part, that's I'm not surrounded by anybody that I know or served in the Marine Corps. So it's this place is I figured out recently is I spend most of the time by myself, um, more around the desert, and that's fine. But it's definitely a change. I don't know where I was going with that, but um,
Well, that might have been part of my problem too, was because when I retired from the McNosk, I mean, I had like two government job offers there, eh, and a couple other contractor jobs too, just by the nature of being
being
there.
there, yeah,
But I really wanted to teach, and I kind of wanted to get out of there and do something completely else. I thought, well, this is just going to be me going back into work, same type of stuff, which would have certainly been more comfortable and, you know, everything. But I wanted to go try to do something else. That's what I
hmm
did, which was difficult, I think, but rewarding.
yeah, no, absolutely. Um, okay, so when you retired, how did it change your family? Wait, were your kids still at home when you retired, or were they? They were still
Yeah.
at home, weren't they?
No, that became a dilemma because my oldest graduated high school in Ohio, right there by Wright-Patterson,
That's
uh,
right.
and he wanted to stay there. He's like, "Dad, these are all my friends." I'm like, "Well, you're not 18 yet, son.
It
Sorry.
sucks.
You're 18, do what you want, but you're coming with us before you're 18." So he came out here, and sure enough, as soon as he turned 18, he's like, "Later, I'm going back." So he did. So that changed the dynamics of our family pretty much. But then the other two stayed home. They we put them through junior college, the same community college I work at now. Put them through there, and then put my middle son. Our offer to the kids was, we'll pay for your college if you stay at home and go to college. We're not going to have you go off out partying everywhere or doing whatever. If you stay home and study and get good grades, we'll pay. So, like, one of our kids took us up on that. The other two were like, "No,
Really?
I'm out of here." Yeah, the oldest one was like, "Later, deuces," and he went and been doing his thing. And the youngest too, he kind of followed him. But our middle son stayed at home, smart, stayed at home, finished up junior college or community college, and then he went to George Mason, got his degree in programming, computer science, and now he's doing very well.
Where's he at now?
He moved to California. Actually, he moved to the Bay Area. You
Okay.
guys, yeah, you guys. I was listening to you and Ray talk about programming, and I agreed with you both so much. I was like, bro, I tried to take basic. I took Fortran way back in the day, and then I took
Ugh,
basic, and then I think I was in graduate school. I had to take I think I had to take Java or something. I don't remember, but that has just never been my thing. I just can't think like that. I'm just like,
no, no,
try reading it. It's just,
that was a horrible dark period of my life when I was a programmer. Yeah.
but my middle
What,
son, Josh, who's autistic, he has Asperger's syndrome, very awkward, but high functioning, just not a people person, just very awkward. And but programming became his thing, and he's just all over that. Give him some Mountain Dew and put him in front of a monitor, and he'll program whatever you want. And he's
that's
been doing
cool.
so well with that. He's making tons of money. Just bought his first house. Didn't even ask
In the
for us
Bay
to.
Area?
Yeah, he just bought a six
Holy
hundred
shit.
thousand
That's
dollars.
good money if you can afford a house in the Bay Area.
Really
Oh,
good.
that's awesome. What
He
about
was
the other two? What'd they end up doing?
he was making six figures within 3 years of graduating.
Man,
And then he came home one day and said, I'm going to move to California. I'm like, what? You got a good job. You're making six figures over there. Well, did you find another job? No, but I will. I'm like, are you sure? It's like,
wow.
"Yeah." So he did. And that was 2020. I think it was a week before COVID kicked off.
Oh,
He
what timing.
COVID, and then everything shut down, and then but his job, they said, well, we really wish you would stay, but okay. And then COVID and everything. So then they called him within about 3 weeks and said, hey, everybody's working from home now because of COVID. And so would you mind coming back and working for us from home, from California for the next year? And we'll see what we can do. And he's like, yeah, sure.
Good job.
And then they did that. And then they worked through everything to get, I guess, able to do business in California. They had to pull some strings or something. And then they, every single time this happened, he got a pay raise and a pay raise. And he's just doing great. He really is.
That's awesome.
Great.
What are the other two up to?
Oldest, getting ready to get his PhD from University of Cincinnati in,
Holy shit.
it's in sociology. Something
Wow.
I have no interest really in, but he does. It's interesting to listen to him talk about it. He's got a passion for it, and he's going to save the world or whatever with that. And I'm like, okay. But I don't know anything about what you're talking about. And then my youngest son, he got a chemistry degree from University of Cincinnati, and now he works like in a lab.
They're smart kids, man.
Yeah, I don't know where they got it from their mother, apparently.
Apparently. So you went to work for Northrop Grumman doing technical training for them. What else did you do after you retired? I know you've had a couple different jobs.
Yeah, that job I had for about 6 years. Got really old driving up north. This Northern Virginia is the worst place to live. I had no less than 2 hours commute one way up there to work every day.
That's crazy.
It would be an hour and a half if there was absolutely no traffic. But that's never the case. It was always 2 hours. I had to stop twice on the way to work to go to the bathroom. It was ridiculous. But I did that for 6 years. It just got really old, and I'm like, I got to find something closer to home. So I got a job at Quantico, working for the FBI with that was interesting. It was so different from what I'd been doing. It was open source intelligence type stuff where we helped.
Really?
We helped. Our contract was a contractor, and I was a technical trainer, and we assisted them in trying to see how I can word it without being too detailed, but like giving a misattributable internet to where they could get on there without being identified to do investigations, mainly like using social media, and then using a lot of tools. They were all open source tools that we would take them and we would kind of tweak them a little bit and then teach them how to use them. And they would use those tools to get all kinds of evidence from people's social media accounts and stuff like that. Yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff.
How long did you do that for?
About 4 years, 4 or 5 years. And then
what made you move on?
Well, COVID hit, and then we were working from home, which was kind of difficult to do that job from home, but we had to. Wasn't much really to do, so it got boring. And then my wife's cancer came back. She had breast cancer years ago, and then it came back the end of 2020. And so she started doing the chemotherapy, and that was awful. And I was like, you know what? I think we can make ends meet. I think we can make this work. What do you think? I'm going to go ahead and retire. I think I will. So I did. And I've always adjunct taught though at the college as a side job. I always taught to a couple classes since about 2008. I've been doing that. So I just, we did fine and just set up a budget, and we were doing okay. It was a little bit of a tight budget, but we were like, this is, I want to spend, how much money do we need? I don't, we did that for about a year. And I'm like, I think I really like teaching, and I want to do more than 1 or 2 or 3 classes. So an opening came up at the college for full time. All you have to do is 5 classes full time. And like, that's not that many more. And why don't I just do that? So I applied for that. It was a grant. I got a temporary job for a year. I rolled it over for another year. Now those are out. So I've just applied like 2 weeks ago for a full-time position that just opened up.
You
So I'll be
said you
doing.
got it, right?
I don't know yet. I'll know in the next week or two, but most likely, because I mean I've been over there for so
Well,
long.
you're
And
known, right? Well,
yeah,
why hire an unknown when you have a known?
yeah,
That makes any sense.
yeah.
What are you teaching at the college?
I teach all kinds of IT classes, mainly cybersecurity. I teach intro to cybersecurity. There's a let's see, 261, which is pretty much penetration testing overview. Uh, I even teach a computer hardware class, which is not really my forte, but they asked me to teach it, so I do. Software. The two 106 and 107, those are like for the A+ certification, and then the cybersecurity class is pretty much geared for the Security Plus certification.
Okay, so they've aligned their curriculum to the certification.
Yeah,
It's a smart way to do it.
we've made sure to do that. Yeah, and then
Hmm.
networking, just some of the basic courses. It's a pretty good fit, I think, for me because I have story after story after story to give them, and they really like that. They don't just like getting the book knowledge, but it really helps, I think, to get a story behind everything, and it's pretty good. And I enjoy
Is that like an online thing for you, or do you actually go into the facility?
half online and half in person. I prefer
Okay.
going in person, really.
That's a weird thing. I got my current gig is working from home remotely. I started that in the spring of 2019, which for a whole crap ton of reasons was just happened to be the best thing that could possibly happen. Um, but I have to imagine. I mean, I've still got 22 years left to retire. Really, I would figure I retired at 70. Um, that's 22 years from now. At some point, probably in that 22 years, I'm gonna have to go back to like a normal working environment, and that's gonna suck. I'll be quite honest. It's gonna suck.
I
I
don't
just
know. I kind of missed that a little bit. I actually have missed a little bit I'm kind of a social person, so I kind of missed the interaction with people at work and smoking and joking while you're at work or whatever, and walking around to talk to people to get things done, because that's always kind of the way I did it.
there's definitely that portion. Don't get me wrong. There's that aspect, and it took me about a year to get used to the fact that I wasn't around people, like like just me at home, right? Um, and I was surprised because I always thought I was more kind of the loner, work by myself. But even just the stupid stuff, like listen to people argue back and forth about Monday Night Football, I missed just the people. But now that I've been doing this for about 5 years now, just the idea of having to get up and spend an hour on the road and then an hour home and then the gas money and then you got to wear clothes. You can't, you got to just, just a lot. So I'm like, man, one of
Yeah.
these days I'm going to have to get a real job and this is going to suck. Then I got to go back in and
I
pay all that
like
crap.
That's why I really like this teaching gig. It doesn't pay very well. I'm making exactly half of what I was making as a contractor, but I don't know. I like the teaching thing. I just I don't know. I enjoy. It's flexible. It's really flexible.
Mhm.
I go into class two or 3 days a week, and then the rest is online. And it's all pretty much, once you get it all set up, kind of it grades itself, and you just do. There's just, it's very flexible, and I don't. It's not a full 8 hour, 40-hour work week. It's just kind of scattered, and it's really, I like the flexibility of it, where I can do what I want a lot.
But I think something you said there though is key though is you enjoy it, right? It's like I would argue most people, for the far greater percentage of people, work a job because it's a job that pays them money that pays their bills. And about their only a connection to it. The lucky few like you actually doing that, getting paid, but actually enjoy what they do is far smaller, I think.
I have a passion for it and enthusiasm from the JJ did tie buckle is I mean that's a huge thing. I almost feel like a cybersecurity recruiter of sorts because I talk about it. Even every class I talk about it. What a great field it is to get into, how rewarding it is. And I say that very point. I say, you guys right now and gals, you're going through this and you're probably taking all these right now. You should be eyes and ears wide open and all these classes that you're taking and find the one that's going to be your niche because you don't want a job that you don't want to drive to or do every day. You want to find a job you love. And I said, cybersecurity, there's a lot that you could do in there. There's so many different jobs you can do within that field. Take a look at all that, and it's wide open right now. And I talk about all that. I also, when I was at Northrop Grumman, we had a close relationship with one of the Northern Virginia high schools up there, Chantilly High School, and we would go there. Also, Northrop Grumman is big sponsors of the Cyber Patriot.
That's right.
Program. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's a recruiting tool for high school and age and now junior high, and I think college too, to get them interested in this competition thing. So I would go down there. So for like this, every year I worked there, like 5 or 6 summers, I would go to Chantilly and teach a week-long summer camp to the high school kids and get them all fired up about cybersecurity. And then I would mentor the teams. We had, I think it was like 8 or 10 teams for cybersecurity or Cyber Patriot that we would then compete. And we went in. It was really, really pretty cool. And I don't know, I can't feel like I'm giving back. I feel like my position is one where I can do the most I can to try to help build the workforce.
Do you see this as a job that you do in retirement, or or is this still just a job and you are yet to retire?
No, I'll probably do it till I keel over. I honestly think that it's a good gig, and I always even suggest that to the students. I always say, you ought to. I'm going to put a little bug in your ear about someday when you get older. Think about teaching what you've done. It's kind of a shame that we all live our lives stovepipe of sorts and do our thing, develop and get the perfect at it. Then we retire, then we are put out to pasture. And then everybody does the same thing. It should be part of our culture, maybe, to where we have a need to go give back and teach. Maybe from the age of 60 to 65, everybody transitions over into a teaching job of some sort. I don't know, but it certainly is a really good thing, I think, to consider that and be able to do that, give back a little bit. Plus, it's it keeps your brain fresh. It's just really good all the way around, I think, for somebody 55 and over.
What's how has your family life changed since getting out of the military? I know your kids were at that point were pretty much gone, but I'm going to hazard a guess that it didn't change much because I think, based upon my observation of you and Brenda and your family, you all were always very close, anyways, and just I don't know. I don't see much changing. But did life change for you at home after getting out of the military?
No, not really. Other than, I mean, it did. It did when the kids. I mean, when the nest started to empty, it did a little bit because we were like all about the family. That's all we did. And then as they started flying the coop, now it's after a couple of years, it's just me and Brenda look at each other and we're like, now what are we? Well, let's have a drink.
It's only 10. Who cares?
Reliving our childhood a little bit and, hooping it up a little bit, and we're taking more vacations and certainly things like that.
That's good.
We started, one of the things we've done to fill the void is volunteering at a dog rescue. Funny you brought that. You said something about that earlier at the SPCA, because that's what we started doing. And my wife, like last year, she dragged me into that. I was like, "What? No, are you kidding me? I'm not going to give up my free time for these dogs. And what, weekends too? Oh, you're kidding me." And then the more I did it, the more it was like, this is actually kind of rewarding, because I've always loved dogs,
Mhm.
and and I'm a people kind of a person too. So we've been fostering. We fostered. We've been only been doing it, I guess, 8 months. We fostered a couple of mama dogs and their puppies. Um, it's a no-kill shelter that we rescue, and they go get dogs from the kill shelters and bring them over. And it's really rewarding to foster these dogs, raise them a little bit, and then on the weekends we take them to the local PetSmart, and it's set up in the back or somewhere in the middle. We bring the dogs and puppies in there,
Okay.
and then people come to look at them, and we, show them, this is our puppy. We've been fostering it. It's just a great little puppy, or whatever. And then they fall in love with it, and then that becomes that puppy's forever home. And it's really pretty rewarding to see that happen. And it's a bittersweet, because you grow attached to these dogs, but
Mhm.
then it's rewarding to know that you're helping out, kind of shuttle them through. And I don't know, that's one of the things we've been using a lot of our free time, because we don't have grandkids. I don't know if our kids are going
I
to
was
give
gonna
us
ask.
kids or not. No,
No grandkids yet?
no, kids are
Hmm.
too nerdy. I don't know what they're up to,
Hey,
but
are they married yet?
this fills the void. Oldest is, middle two,
Okay.
no. I don't know why they're not as I don't know, our kids don't seem to be interested in having kids or anything anymore. I don't know why. Our
You
younger
know,
two are tough.
I read an article the other day, or I heard on something. Anyways, back in like I think it was the 60s, 70s was the first frame of reference. It was like most young adults, 2/3 of young adults were looking to have kids at some point. Now, 1/3 at the
Really.
most want to have kids, which is quite a significant change.
Yeah.
Um, all right, so reflecting back on your life, if you could go back in time and talk to yourself at 17, what would you tell yourself?
I guess hmm. I wouldn't have listened at 17 anyway, so
Probably not.
to waste my breath. But I'd say I guess some of the things, maybe that's what I'm doing now. Maybe that's why I really like what I'm doing now as a teacher, is that I feel like I am kind of giving back, because I was so I guess I would say keep your eyes and ears open to what's interesting to you, and then go for it, and don't just half-ass go for it. Execute violently. I love that about the Marines. Have a plan and then execute violently. I tell the students,
Absolutely.
what? I'm like, yeah, execute violently. You don't do anything half-assed. And I say, go after that. Find your niche. Go after that. Work hard. Which I didn't figure out until I was in my late 20s. And it would have been better if I'd have known that earlier. I was a knucklehead, you know?
That's what the early 20s are for.
Mm-hmm.
If there was something else that you could have done, like for example, like for me, for if I could have been like a game warden, I think that would have been a much better career that fit my personality in the long run. Now, I don't regret doing what I did by any means, but that would have been a cool ass job. Like I could have
That would have
spent
been like
30, 40.
perfect
Yeah.
life or
Yeah. I
something.
think that would have been perfect. I missed an opportunity there, I would say. Is when you look at your life, was there like, I don't know, be a freaking astronaut? Was there something else that if you could have, you would have done?
No,
Or
I
are you
mean,
pretty satisfied?
I'm satisfied. I When I was a kid, I really wanted to be a pilot. I specifically a helicopter pilot. I thought that would have been really fun, but my vision wasn't. That limited me for that. But in a Yeah, in another life, I think I probably would enjoy that. I think I would enjoy. I think I really would have enjoyed being a law enforcement officer. Well,
It's
up until
interesting. It's interesting you say another life, and being raised religious. Are you still religious? Or is
uh,
your kids?
no,
No.
no, and I do regret that. I think that we should have grown up. We should have raised them more religious. I think than we did. I think that would have. I think
I
that would have helped them in a lot of ways, socially and stuff like that.
I question a little bit if maybe shouldn't have done something a little bit different in that area too. Only because so right now I would say my kids have two influences. They have the family influence and then they have school influence, right? And it would be probably would have been better if they would have had a community of people that you typically find in a church
Yeah.
who are also a third influence, but that influence matches your values and principles closer than you can expect from the school, for example. So sometimes I wonder if just yeah, it would have been a better choice to expose them to a larger group of people. Because otherwise, now it's like, well, that's just mom and dad. That's just what mom and dad think. And then mom and dad are old and crazy. Where no, that's what mom and dad and everybody else that you know, they think too. And then you have school, for example, that's completely different. But it's interesting that you mentioned that because I sometimes think the same thing. Like, yeah, might have the religious part of it is one thing, but just the community of people that share the same
Well,
values and principles.
yeah, the influence. I think the
Yeah, the
influence
influence.
of good
That's a good
people
way
that
of putting the influence. Um, Now you've been married for shit
38 years.
38 years.
Plus,
What's the secret, man? What's the secret?
and I can't even begin to take any credit for any of that because she must be a saint. I don't know how she. I don't know how she put up with me this many years. Honestly, you know what a knucklehead I am. I don't know. I don't know. I guess communication. I guess we've always been very close. We always talked about everything. Uh, we don't leave each other's side, especially anymore.
Yeah,
And that's why when the 20 and 2020 and 2021, I was like, nothing in the world right now is more important than Brenda. So I'm done with everything, and I'm going to concentrate on just being with her. Because I'm realizing now, oh my, life's short, and you don't
yeah.
there's no guarantees. And okay, well, I'm not going to drive away from her to go to work anymore if I don't have to. But
I gotta say, man, I got a tremendous amount of respect for you. Um, most I would say, I don't know. Most is fair. Probably most is probably fair. Most people would have placed more importance on having a career that it would financially provide for than the time spent that you have had, and to consciously make that choice when you could have made choices to go after more money here or whatever is that says a lot about you as a person. It,
thanks.
it just does. Um, and I'm not sure most people would have made that same decision.
I guess like I said before, we've done okay, and we're happy, and I don't need a Harley, I don't need a speedboat, I don't need a Winnebago. I don't need any of that stuff to be happy. We got everything, I've got plenty of hobbies around here. We do plenty of things that don't cost a bunch of money. I don't need all that. Unfortunately, I think the American dream, too many people, have to keep up with the Joneses and have all, live for all that stuff, and then they're in debt, and then I don't know. But
You,
I don't.
your relationship and your attitude reminds me a lot of you remember Chief Warrant Officer Rob Cloutier?
Yeah,
Him and his wife have I'm not going to say the same, but you remind me quite a bit. They're tight at the hip, doing things together. He retired early because he wanted to spend more time with his wife, and just a lot of things remind me of that. In fact, I need to interview him as well.
still lives in. Does he still live in 29 Palms?
Yep, Joshua Tree.
Tired,
Yep.
does he?
Oh yeah. In fact, I seen him. I think maybe a year and a half ago. He was up this direction. Um, Is there anything that you can think of right now? Let's just say in 15 years, if we're all still here, your grandkids open up YouTube and they watch this. Is there anything that you'd want to say to them?
Man, these questions. Wow. Um, I think I would. Yeah, I guess I would say I don't have any regrets. I've obviously made mistakes and had haven't it hasn't been a perfect life, but I feel thankful for everything that I have. But I also think that I probably should take a little bit of credit for open doors and you know, like if I, taking advantage of the situation, working as much. I'm glad I don't um I don't have any regrets, and I would like to say that a big part of I think anyone's life, you start to realize as you get older that in the end doesn't amount to a hill of beans really what you did. Uh, so you just got to do the best with it that you can and make an impact, I think, and make a difference. It's not just about chasing the dollar and having all the toys and the biggest house and all that ego stuff. It's it's more about what you have given back and done. And I would like them to do that. I would like you to, I guess I have set an example, I think, about that as far as trying to do what I can to give back to society, to, because I'm very thankful for everything that I have. And I hope that I don't take it for granted or have a big ego about anything. I think what's important is in the end, what you did for society, what you did, the friends that you had and how you treated them, family that you had and how you treated them, and just everybody you bumped into. I treat everybody fairly. I won't treat, the janitor any differently than I would the president of the college or the lieutenant any differently from the lance corporal. They're all people and they all deserve respect and be listened to, and that's important stuff. And
Is Brenda back?
yeah, she just walked back in.
She's like, you're still talking? Oh my god. Name one person that has had the most impact on you, or maybe not the most. That's definitive. But name one besides Brenda, because you can't use Brenda. That's too easy. Someone that has had a significant impact on your life in a good way.
Yeah.
Narrow that down a little bit.
Oh, in a good way.
Yeah, in a good way.
But no. Uh, man, these questions. Let's see, one person. I mean, I guess I'm gonna have to say my dad. She brought beer. She's asking me if I'm beer. Sorry.
There you go.
Yeah, my dad. I'm gonna have to say my dad because he didn't. He had a really rough life. I got along with him off and on a lot over the years. Thank you. Yingling. Yummy.
There you go. Yingling. You're drinking light? Oh man,
Well,
Yingling in the bottle.
But Yingling is a good beer, man. I really
Yingling
like
is the best, hands down. Period. Hey, you can't get it on the West Coast. You can't get it past basically the Mississippi, which is tragic.
Definitely, you're getting it. I mean, I remember when I first got here, I went on I had a TAD trip up to Pennsylvania, and I went in there, and they're like Yingling, and I'm like, let me have one of those Yingling. And she says, I'll bring you as many as you want, honey, if you can pronounce it right. I'm like, oh, how do you say it? She's like, Yingling, okay. And then now, because you couldn't even find it around here really that much, and now it's like such good. Yeah, it's really good beer.
Okay, so your dad.
Oh, my dad. He got into alcoholism after my mom died. That just devastated him. I can't even imagine having wife and a son, and then losing your wife like that with a 4-year-old and everything
Yeah.
we went through. And, he worked hard and he took good care of us and had his own, demons from that. But I think he did good, set a good example for me as far as working hard and having good morals and just being a good, solid person. So I would have to say my dad, even though off and on we didn't really agree about everything, really, especially towards the end. We started getting kind of at each other's throats and stuff. But he was a good man, and he did have a good influence on me.
All right, 2 more questions. I'm going to start with the hard one first because this was hard because it's all talking about yourself. I've asked you one person that impacted you outside of your family because family's too easy. Who is someone that you know that you've personally impacted and why?
Oh, now that's actually easier.
Really?
So, yeah, there's there's a few examples, but there's one kid that comes to mind. His name is Bashoy. He's from Egypt and lived up in Northern Virginia, and he went to Chantilly High School. And when I worked for Northrop Grumman and I would go to those summer camps every year, I saw him as a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, because he was interested in the cybersecurity, and I saw him go from a knucklehead joker freshman to kind of a knucklehead, kind of interested in cybersecurity as a sophomore to totally into it, help running the summer camp and teaching the kids as a junior to
Nice.
teaching the kids and doing everything as a senior. And then he graduated, went to George Washington with a degree in, I think, computer science. And then now he works for Microsoft in Washington. And he's just doing all kinds of awesome things. And I'm so proud of him. He lost his father at a young age. And I think kind of got a bond maybe about that a little bit. Or for whatever reason, he saw me as a mentor and we kept in touch. And I got his help because he was a student and the other students looked up to him, and I get his help at summer camp. And you know how you get a motivator and you
that
get there.
cumulative effect.
Oh yeah. And I was just really impressed with that young man and what he did and where he is. I still keep in touch with him, and it was great to see that and to feel like I was an influence on him. I really do feel that way.
Okay. Final question, then we'll wrap this up.
Okay.
And keeping in mind, I don't want this podcast to be about just military guys I know, and that's why, like, although Ray Letier had a 20-year career in the Air Force, I knew him from the Marine Corps, but the field's open to anybody that I can talk to be quite honest. I'll talk to anybody. If you had to recommend a person that would be really interesting to talk to about their life, who would that be? That you know?
Oh. Huh. Marine or
Yeah,
not a Marine?
I like this. I'm making you think. I'm not just asking you easy questions.
Yeah, man. Wow. Did you did you hit Ray up with all these type of questions too?
I'm getting better as I go.
Hard time. I don't know. What was the question again?
If you had to recommend somebody else to talk to
Oh.
that has had a life that you think is interesting and would be fun to talk to, who would that be? Or if you had to sit on this side and you want to talk to somebody, who would it be?
What's that? What's his name? What's that Marine that went warrant officer and then he went LDO that we worked with at the schoolhouse?
Pat Toll.
Yeah.
Yep.
A good story right there.
Man,
that
dude amazes me.
Yeah.
No, and I will talk to him, but it's going to be about another 10 or 15 years because I want him to get older. I want him to experience life on the outside. He just retired. You know what I mean?
No,
I want to get that.
you can interview him again in 15 years.
Yeah,
But
that's true. I could interview him now and interview him later.
He's hit 5+ or something. He lives. I need to connect with him. He retired, and I think he lives in Fredericksburg.
Yeah.
Actually,
No, he's an amazing guy. I remember every once in a while I'll joke with him. I'll be like, remember when we used to be like slopping up sausage gravy with pieces of bacon down there at the
Charlie's. Yeah,
Charlie's? Oh yeah. No, I followed him, and I like to think that if I had stayed in longer, because I got out just as soon after 20 as I could. I like to think I would have either retired to CW05 or I had gone LDO, and I probably would end up as a major, just from time. Because you and I both know, and I don't mean I hope I don't get a bunch of people who call me up and call me an asshole for saying this, but making rank in the military is really about just being around, meeting the requirements, but being willing to hang around long enough to get there. You know what I mean? As long as you stay out of trouble and you do what you're supposed to,
no
you're going to
spleen.
get promoted sooner or later. It's just a matter of waiting out the next guy. So I retired as a 3. I definitely would have been a 5 if I'd stayed for 10. And every once in a while I think about it, I'm like, man, if I'd stayed 10 more, I'd be like, no shit, fully retired. Like, legitimately not doing a thing. But then I think that's a lot of PFTs, a lot of CFTs, a lot of deployments. And really, it was a deployment for me. This isn't supposed to be about me, but when I came back from, because I went to Warrant Officer course and I went to Okinawa. And when I came back, I knew I was deploying, right? I mean, there's no doubt. I hadn't deployed yet just because of the duty station, how they had worked out. So I went to division, and I had it in my mind because this is what I'd been told from everybody it was a 7-month tour. You do 7 months, come home. Well, when I checked into the headquarters element of G6 at 2MEF with division, I was like, oh, this 7 months, so we should be back in like July, right? They're like, no. You're going for a year. Sucks for you. And that, although I am incredibly grateful for the opportunity to go for a year, just to go in general, because otherwise, why do you join the military, right? You don't join the military to stay stateside. I'm glad I went, but I'd never want to do it again. It was entirely too difficult on my kids. My middle child, Melinda, who's 18 now, actually 19 now, did not handle that deployment well at all. So as soon as I hit 20, I popped smoke. But sometimes I think about it, I'm like, man, I like CWO5 or a major LDO pay at 30 years. That's good money.
Me too. Yeah, I think about
But no
that.
regrets.
If I had, because I'm sure with my degree as a sergeant, I could have went officer. They just, with the degree, I think they just send you straight through or whatever. I totally could have done that and probably retired as a lieutenant colonel, major. I don't know. And I'm sure I'd have. I just didn't really. I don't know. I got burnt. I never really wanted to be much of a manager. I got a little bit burnt out of it on active duty, like almost getting fired because three of your Marines get, just stupid, all that. And all the doing fit reps and all that. I'm a people person, but not so much like as a manager sense. So I never really had as much of an interest in that. I always would rather just do the work. And after I retired, I'm like, I don't want a boss position. I just want to be a guy doing the work. That's all. I enjoy doing that more.
Yep.
That's what I excelled at. I don't know. I'm probably too forgetful and scatterbrained and stuff to really be a super good manager anyways. I was all right as an enlisted guy and working as a team, but as far as like managing a lot of people or whatever, I never really had an interest in that. I didn't want to do that. Different career path.
Yeah. Everybody has their own thing, right?
Yeah.
All
You
right,
gotta
Terry. Well, I appreciate your time. We're at 2.5 hours now, so I should probably wrap this up.
All right.
We've been talking forever, so I'll be respectful of your time and let you go. But I do appreciate the opportunity to sit down and talk with you. I appreciate you being open and talking about anything and everything that came off the top of my brain. It's been a pleasure. I feel like I know you better. I feel like I have a better understanding of who you are, not just my time in 29 Palms, but No, thank you very much for this opportunity. I thank you.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it, Daryl. It's been good.
Awesome.
Really
All right.
appreciate
Well,
it.
I'm gonna hit stop on this thing.
All right, man.